A soft cry echoes across the lake, deep in the mountains. The boy stares blankly into the distance, completely lost in his thoughts. He barely registers his father calling out to him. The man just watches. Warm eyes wonder what could have captured his son's focus so completely. Startled, the boy blinks as his father suddenly appears right next to him. With a warm smile, he asks his son to help pull in the net. Soon they will see the catch. For a kid, this is pure, simple fun. Flopping fish, pieces of crabs, and all the usual wet clutter. Still, it is a wonderful day of shared labor, nature, and quiet love. Suddenly, a bright red carp flashes in the water, absolutely beautiful. Extremely rare around here. Without a second thought, the kid plunges in. He refuses to let it escape, but the moment he goes underwater, everything changes. The red carp is gone. Instead, a bizarre, heavy sensation washes over him. He freezes, paralyzed. He tries to call out, but his voice is gone. His father cannot hear him. Suddenly, the peaceful lake dissolves into dark night. He is floating near a boat in the dark, waking from a heavy daze. He realizes he is trapped inside the vessel, hands bound tight and his clothes shredded. Two men stand over him. One is the cold, silent Lord Jiang. The other is Baining Xiang, an assistant with a cunning, cruel smirk. The villain mockingly asks the boy if he still misses his dear father. The bastard is highly pleased, deeply admiring Lord Jiang's ruthless mind. They lured the boy here specifically to serve as live monster bait. The sweet memory of fishing with his father was just a drug-induced dream. Now fully awake, the freezing reality of his terrifying situation crashes down on him. He remembers now. It has been a month since he arrived in this world. The original boy had tragically died of a sudden, painful illness. Mother died in childbirth, leaving him to be raised solely by his father. But 3 months ago, his father died, leaving him completely alone. Confused and vulnerable, he fell straight into Gang's trap to become bait. That was when he learned humans can achieve godlike power through cultivation. They call them martial arts masters, and their power is truly terrifying. But humans are not the only ones who can grow stronger here. Even beasts can cultivate. Staring into the dark water, the boy spots a shadow. He screams a warning to the others. It is already right here. A colossal water monster appears near the boat, its outline absolutely massive. The predator glides closer, its massive scaled back breaking the dark surface. It zeroes in on the boat, sensing the warm flesh of living prey. The giant water beast is clearly expecting an easy, satisfying meal tonight. The boy mutters that the moment of truth has finally arrived. 10 grueling years of hidden training have led up to this single blow. Can this massive water demon even survive the sheer force of his strike? Suddenly, the massive crocodile-like beast opens its terrifying, cavernous jaws. With a horrific crunch, the wooden fishing boat snaps cleanly in two. Splinters fly everywhere as the men cling desperately to the floating wreckage. Clinging desperately to avoid those waiting jaws, Ban Xinjiang panics. Terror gripped him. No way he could die here. The man realized things were looking bad. A sudden desperate idea popped into his head. He grabbed a knife and slashed the boy's arm. Drawing blood, a trail of red stretched out behind the body, thrown into the water with his hands tied. Even if he tried to fight back, it was already too late. Lured by the scent of blood, a huge water monster was approaching him, ready to swallow the boy whole. He could no longer resist or survive in the water without oxygen. His eyes slowly closed, hearing his father calling his name. How wonderful it would be if that were actually true. His father calling his name, with a warm hand reaching out to pull him from the water. And now the boy seems saved, clinging to a piece of wood, surely about to survive. But of course, things are never that easy for our main character. Huge water monster has already reached him. He still has to live and prove to his dad that he tried and did everything he could, and the monstrous beast isn't satisfied yet, and now its massive jaws have practically snapped shut. Right next to the boy, suddenly he spotted a large chest in the water. Covered in slime yet still fairly intact and sturdy, the boy was sinking. To the bottom, not breathing, showing absolutely no signs of life. There were water currents swirling around his body when suddenly a system message appeared about. The system being activated, the water monkey turned out to be a compatible. Spirit compatibility was confirmed, and his body's restoration instantly began. The boy woke up and realized he hadn't died, although his last memories were of a huge monster about to swallow him whole. He now felt very strange, realizing he could breathe easily and felt no resistance from the water, as if he were on Earth. A strange stream of water hovered near the boy's hand. It turned out he had acquired an active skill, allowing him to control the stream of water. He confirmed once again that he could control water and even breathe easily while submerged, though it was unclear how this was possible. The boy looked at his hands and noticed that all his wounds had completely healed. He could have rejoiced at such a happy outcome, but suddenly the boy sensed that someone was behind him. The boy braced for the giant crocodile to devour him. He waved his arms frantically. Boom! This action activated his ability to control the water current. The current quickly bound the monster, keeping it from harming the boy, and a notification about water control appeared right before the young man. The system was almost exactly like in the comics. The young man realized that absolutely nothing restricted him in the water. He could breathe and move normally, as well as control the water. But soon, the young man realized his ability had limits. He needed to act faster, knowing he would not last very long. He had to calm the water monster before it was too late. Right then, the boy received a notification that he had been granted the Blood Mark of Subjugation skill. To activate it, he needed to draw an ancient rune with his own blood to form a contract with the monster, but first he had to catch it. Catch the beast, first step, first victory. He set out to do exactly that. Using his water flow control skill, the young man managed to hold the water monster near him. After that, the young man drew a rune with his blood on his hand. Not knowing what this would lead to, he reached out with his. A bloody mark burns on the monster. It suddenly thrashes wildly from side to side with bloodshot eyes, looking absolutely terrifying and deadly. As it lunges forward, looking completely ready to swallow the exhausted Lin Zai whole, while his mind starts slipping away and his entire body undergoes painful, sudden changes. Under the pressure, he desperately needs to finish this process. To survive, gathering every single drop of his remaining willpower, he screams a final command: obey, late that cold night. Lin Zai, wearing shredded fisherman rags, crawls onto the wet shore. Completely drained, he collapses onto the freezing mud, barely able to stand at all, gasping for breath as the massive water monster slowly rises near and crawls toward him, looking ready to devour the weak boy instantly. But instead, the exhausted boy has successfully subdued the massive, hulking creature, which is now ready to serve its new master. He has officially claimed the water monkey spirit, ordering his companion to stay hidden nearby. For now, ready to emerge at his call, through the bloody bond. Rune, a mental channel, now connects Lin Zai to the water beast, allowing summons from anywhere. With his work finally done, he decides it is finally time to go back to his humble shack and sleep, fortunately guided by the vague memories still remaining in his mind. Somewhere nearby, meanwhile, a group of armed villagers led by Yung Xiang walks down the street while Xinjiang guides him with fawning smiles. As they head toward the shack, local fishermen watch in confusion, realizing the young boy is in massive trouble with the greedy Xinjiang. Standing in the crowd is young Li Libo. He watches the aggressive group closely, instantly understanding that his friend is in serious danger tonight. Xinjiang is thrilled, already planning to seize the entire shack and all belongings. For himself, believing the boy is dead. Now, watch how beautifully this backfires. The angry visitor, who hates disappointments and despises everyone in general. Xinjiang kicks the door wide open, inviting him. inside assuring him there is no danger, but suddenly the old man freezes. In total shock, rubbing his eyes, sitting right in the middle. Is the boy ashy, wide awake? It is an impossible, shocking sight. Rubbing his eyes from being rudely awakened, he looks up at his uninvited guests asking what they want. In truth, Lenzai has almost nothing besides his newly tamed beast, but he is no weakling at all. Meanwhile, Xinjiang is furious because he never expected this. To see a living boy here, forcing a fake, gentle smile, he quickly introduces Lenzai to Yung Xiang, a powerful, arrogant servant of the Zhao clan, who mockingly notes the boy's incredible luck in surviving the lake, but then the guest abruptly signals his guards to grab Lenzai. The boy screams in panic, unable to understand what they want from him as they roughly pin his arms to the dirt and start beating him. Yung Xiang snaps that Lord Zhao hired a master named Jiang to slay the monster plaguing the village, and accuses the shameless boy Lane Zai of conspiring with the beast all along. The monster taking Lord Jiang with it, the village lost a fortune, and to make matters worse, the threat still loomed over them. The boy desperately tried to explain how he was dragged off and used as live bait for the beast, but his words fell on deaf ears. Instead, they blamed him for Lord Jiang's death, furious that a mere child had actually survived. The bitter accusation triggered a memory from his past life, where people also labeled him a monster just for being an outcast. Back then, the other kids relentlessly mocked him, even pinning a cruel note to his back that branded him a thief. All because they assumed any parentless kid was bound to steal. Growing up did not change a single thing. The shadow of that abuse followed him straight into adulthood. There was always some cruel crowd waiting to tear him down for their own sick amusement. But he remembered another reason they called him a monster. He was utterly unstoppable. Once his temper flared, absolutely nothing could stand in his way. Right now, Lenzai was boiling with sheer fury. He knew that showing off his true power here was incredibly risky. But rolling over and playing dead simply was not his style, so the boy made his move. He wrenched himself free from the servant's hold and slammed a heavy fist straight into the brute's stomach, but fighting three grown men at once meant the odds were heavily stacked against him. During the struggle, a nearby washing basin tipped over as Lenzai was thrown to the ground. As his hand splashed into the cold puddle, an intense sensation washed over him. He could actually manipulate the water, giving him the power to tear these thugs limb from limb. Xinjiang snarled at the boy's defiance and quickly turned to Mr. Jiang with a dark proposal. He suggested binding the kid and dragging him straight to the Zhao estate as forced labor. They were running low on workers, and a worthless orphan was the perfect target to exploit. Mr. Jiang glared at the kid, offering a cruel choice: either submit as Lord Zhao's adopted son, or have both of his legs shattered right then and there. Meanwhile, a restless crowd of villagers had gathered nearby, whispering about this bizarre adoption. Something felt deeply wrong about the sudden interest the estate was showing in local kids. And trust me, anyone dragged into that mansion was never seen again. Just as tension peaked, an elderly man pushed through the crowd, demanding to know what was happening. He barked out a warning, asking who dared to lay a hand on little AI. It was the village headman, arriving to protect the kid at the urging of a close friend. The elder directly confronted Mr. Jiang, proudly declaring himself a loyal official of the dynasty. He refused to tolerate this blatant lawlessness in a territory under his personal watch. He demanded to know if they truly intended to assault a government representative. Jiang Zhang quickly realized this petty dispute could spiral into a massive political disaster for them. The elder kept shouting, warning that even Lord Zhao was legally bound to show him proper respect. He claimed the stress was giving him a heart attack, meaning they would be held fully responsible. Desperate to avoid a public scene, Jiang Zhang decided it was best to back down. He muttered that he would respect the old man's authority for now, but left a chilling warning. He sneered that Lord Zhao would not forget this insult, then turned his back. Barking quick orders at his surrounding guards, he retreated from the property. Xinjiang spat on the ground, muttering that the boy was just as useless as his father. The village elder gently advised Lin Zai to keep his head down and avoid any further trouble. Lin Zai bowed in gratitude, promising to remain extremely cautious moving forward. With the threat gone, the headman headed back to his own residence alongside his friend. Left alone in the quiet house, Lin Zai quietly reflected on the dangerous path ahead. He knew these dangerous situations would happen again, meaning he had to be ready. The village elder had saved his life this time, but he knew the old man could not protect him forever. Ashi had to find a way to become much stronger, and this cheat system was his fastest path to true power. Checking his interface, he discovered he had acquired a rare water type beast and initiated its evolution. Once evening fell, Ashi quickly made his way down to the pond to speak with his brand new pet, having tamed the crocodile Tahu. He could communicate with it telepathically at any moment, so, without waiting, Ashi summoned his aquatic companion and eagerly waited for it to crawl ashore. Tahu finally emerged, but he looked nothing like the massive beast Ashi expected. Talk about a complete letdown. Ashi stared at the toy-sized crocodile, completely baffled by where his giant, terrifying monster had gone. Apparently, these tamed water creatures could alter their size to save energy. Right now, Tahu was keeping a miniature form to keep his energy consumption low. Ashi relaxed once he realized this was just the system optimizing the beast's stats. It truly was an incredible feature. He turned to his tiny companion and asked the little crocodile where he had discovered the strange aquatic entity. Ashi wanted to inspect it himself, which meant diving deep and following the guide. Luckily, the young man had no trouble holding his breath underwater. Before long, Tahu guided him straight into a hidden underwater grotto. This was it. Scattered all over the cave floor were legendary, glowing spiritual plants. They looked like glowing sausages. Ashi had never seen anything like them. But he had heard the stories. Water essence plants could boost your powers if you consumed them. In this vast world, countless treasures existed, containing various elemental energies. They belonged to different elements, but everyone just called them spiritual plants. There were rumors about a special pond at the Zio estate where legendary lilies grew. These plants attracted powerful cultivators who desperately wanted a share. They would gladly serve Lord Zio just to get them. Ashi was thrilled. He immediately began plucking the rare plants, unsure of how much potent water essence he could actually harvest. He asked Tahu to help him gather them, but the lazy reptile just rolled onto his back with his paws sticking straight up in the air. Fine, he would do all the heavy lifting without the little slacker. Ashi collected every single plant in the grotto and hauled them back to the rocky shore. Sitting on the rocks, he prepared to consume his valuable harvest. This raw water essence could evolve his pet or improve his own spiritual fusion. Plus, it was actually delicious, so the young man scarfed down every single plant he gathered. Ashi brought up his status screen. He had to choose how to allocate the power. He could invest the essence into Tahu's evolution or merge with the water spirit himself. Ultimately, he chose self-improvement. Ashi initiated the leveling process. Feeling the surging energy wash over him, now he could definitely take down those thugs. If he could master his water control, no one would ever intimidate him again. He tried activating his new water flow skill. Confidence surged through his veins. This was only the very beginning, and his body was already changing. Being so young and childlike, his body could not handle any more energy yet. Ashi knew he had to solve his cash flow problems immediately before winter arrived. Winter was coming, meaning his pet crocodile Tahua would soon hibernate. With no way to rely on him, the crocodile suddenly tossed a massive fish. A beautiful catch flew out of the water, as if Tahua could sense his thoughts. Ashi picked up the little crocodile, incredibly pleased with his clever companion. Now he had a perfect plan to make some quick cash selling high-quality fish. With Tahua supplying the goods, the boy headed out early the next morning. He successfully sold off the premium fish Tahua had tossed out of the water for him. Now he held 80 coins, a modest sum, but a solid start. These old-school merchants were not like cold vending machines. You could actually negotiate. Striking a deal or setting up an installment plan was totally doable here. With that, Ashi knew his money issues were temporarily solved. Now he just had to handle that crazy old man, Xinjiang, and right on cue. The despicable villain spotted the boy in the crowd and called out to him. Xinjiang claimed their recent clash was just a big misunderstanding. He wanted to apologize, saying he was lucky to run into Ashi like this. Pointing toward his nearby boat, the old man invited Ashi on board for lunch. Ashi stared back with deep suspicion as Xinjiang urged him to relax. The old man swore they would be completely alone, though that was a blatant lie. An ambush was already waiting on that boat, and this time Ashi would definitely fail to escape, yet the boy simply smiled back, looking incredibly pleased. He replied that if they were truly alone, he had no reason to decline. Accepting the wonderful offer, elsewhere Xinjiang was kneeling, surrounded by 3 armed guards while listening closely to the stern warnings of Yongxiang. Yongxiang explained that the recent estate trials had been going terribly. Many test subjects had already died, and vital medicinal herbs were running low. Since the orphan boy Lionsai had no family, he was the perfect candidate. Xinjiang, his face covered in fresh bruises, eagerly promised he understood. He swore that Lionsai would never escape again, promising to deliver him. Yongxiang promised that if the old man succeeded this time, Lord Ya would personally secure him a spot with the sect elite. Xinjiang was absolutely thrilled, and Yongxiang confirmed the deal. Everything was set. Xinjiang felt a sudden rush of hope. He would finally achieve immortality and reach the absolute peak. Overwhelmed with mad delight, he dramatically ripped open his shirt. He let out a manic, demonic laugh, exposing bloody runes carved on his flesh. He desperately wanted to join their ranks. Fast forward, and he was on the boat with Ashi. He busied himself preparing food, casually praising the beautiful river scenery. It was incredibly peaceful, with absolutely no one around to disturb them. As he cooked, he suggested they put their past differences aside over lunch. Watch closely as he stirs. Xinjiang slips a red pill into the soup. Ashi watched the old man closely, asking if they were truly alone out here. Xinjiang gave a reassuring smile, claiming he had personally made sure of it. There was absolutely nothing for the young boy to worry about. The old man figured he wouldn't need any extra ears. To hear the boy's screams after drinking that fish soup, meanwhile, Ashi was pleased. Knowing there wasn't a single soul around, suddenly, Ashi climbed into the boat. Activating the water jet controls, Xinjiang didn't even have time to register what was happening before he crashed down. Instantly, his head was swallowed by a rushing current. The pot of fresh soup flipped right over. The heavy current did its work, and soon the old man was drowning. In the dark depths, life slowly drained from his wretched, vile body. When Xinjiang finally came to, he was sprawled at the bottom of his boat. His hands and feet tightly bound in ropes, Ashi sat right beside him. Mocking how the old man slept like a baby, night had already fallen. And Ashi was tired of waiting. Xinjiang panicked as reality set in. Ashi calmly flashed the wallet filled with the money they had paid. To bring Ashi to the estate, Xinjiang looked at him with desperate hope. And sheer pain, he stammered that he could explain everything, but Ashi refused to listen. He suggested they look around and get their bearings. Xinjiang instantly recognized the area. They were in the exact spot. Right where that water monster attacked, and get this, a giant, toothy crocodile erupted from the water, snapping its lethal jaws. Yet Ashi stood there completely unfazed. The old man looked up in absolute horror. Staring at the beast, He braced for death, but the monster unexpectedly leaned its massive snout right toward the boy. Ashi explained it was his new pet. Xinjiang realized he was done for. He fell to his knees and begged the boy for his life, promising to reveal the entire truth. Ashi demanded to know why Master Jung wanted to lure him into Zio's estate and why everyone keeps disappearing. The truth is sickening. Those innocent victims were sacrificed so Lord Zio could achieve immortality. He harvested their life force to create pearls of immortality, a horrific fate awaiting anyone who stepped foot inside the estate. Their very souls and energy were ripped away. Ashi realized that Xin Jiang himself had been feeding innocent people to this meat grinder for years. The old coward tried to justify it, whining that he had no other choice. But deep down, the vile old man hoped that Lord Zio's guards would arrive to capture the boy. Ashi raised a heavy stone high above the crying old man's head, completely ignoring his pathetic pleas. A second later, blood splattered across the boat and Ashi's clothes. Leaving a monster like Xin Jiang alive was never an option, not only because he was evil, but because he saw Ashi's terrifying true nature. If he hadn't killed Xin Jiang, they would have captured him and harvested him for that disgusting pearl. He had to act. The young man tossed the corpse into the water as beast food, allowing his pet to grow stronger. Now he needed a way to protect himself. Xin Jiang's lifeless body sank slowly into the cold depths. Morning broke over the peaceful waters. Ashi washed the blood away and sat in the boat, his pet resting quietly on his shoulder. He stared at the stream of water swirling in his palm, marveling at his power. Things were definitely getting easier. Several days had passed since the old man was eliminated. To keep suspicion away, he played the part of a simple fisherman, rising early to head out to the river and coming back late to sell his catch. Ashi never went back to the murder scene. He simply told the villagers that Ban Jiang had gifted him a boat as an apology for bringing those thugs around. After that, the old man apparently just packed up and vanished. Naturally, Lord Zio's subordinates did not buy this convenient little story at all. The missing accomplice meant the trail would eventually lead right back to him. He knew it too. Ashi needed to build up his strength and fast. If he wanted rapid growth, his best bet was joining a martial sect. Pyongyang had 3 major clans, and the absolute powerhouse among them was the Yang clan. Word on the street was that their master possessed truly terrifying martial power. A man capable of crushing gold and splitting boulders, keeping them at the top. If Ashi could secure a spot there, the Zio family wouldn't dare lay a finger on him. Harming a clan disciple would bring down a world of trouble, but here is the catch. The entry fee for a top clan ranged anywhere from 5 to 8 silver coins. Ashi was still way short of that sum, meaning he needed a quick hustle. Just then, Tahua leaned close and whispered something right into his ear. He realized he was overthinking the future. Since his latest breakthrough, he felt different. His physical body was getting stronger, and his mental focus was sharpening too. Maybe now he could actually summon and command 2 beasts at the same time. But first, he had to fish. Swimming was becoming second nature to him now. Lately, Ashi had spent hours training deep beneath the river waves. He played underwater tag with Tahua as she whipped up powerful currents around his feet. Using the rushing water, he would propel himself forward with incredible speed. It took crazy concentration and drained his stamina rapidly. He got tired way faster than he would from a normal swim. Still, his speed was unmatched. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye. A gorgeously colored fish shot past, moving with absolute blinding speed. Ashi recognized those distinctive reddish-pink scales and sharp spines immediately. In Dashan, some wildlife evolved by absorbing spiritual energy from nature. They were called mystical fish, and right now, he was looking at 2. This was unbelievable. Normally, finding even one of these was a rare miracle. And yet, 2 of them had just swam right up to him at once. Ashi signaled Tayua to tail the first fish while he went after the other. He couldn't even explain his actions. It was just pure, raw hunter's instinct. He silently cursed himself for not bringing a proper fishing net along. But then it hit him. He literally had control over the currents. Ashi focused, sending a sudden burst of water directly toward his target. The fish froze instantly, trapped in a tight, swirling bubble of water. Before the pressure could drop, he shot forward and grabbed the mystical beast. He smiled, deeply satisfied with his quick thinking and the prize. Now his status showed his crocodile companion, his savings, and this new catch. This lucky catch meant he was finally one step closer to his goal. Ashi was ready to sell the mystical fish for a tidy sum, completely absorbed in his plans and future earnings, totally blind to the threat creeping up. Something suddenly wrapped its thick arms around his waist. Ashi caught sight of a massive monster towering above him before it slammed him to the bottom of the riverbed. The impact was violent. Blood nearly gushed from his throat. Ashi desperately tried to pull himself back together as fast as humanly possible, staring at the monster without knowing what kind of beast was swimming his way. He remembered old legends about a man-eating catfish that lurked in the deep riverbed, and right now, his luck had run completely dry. He had met the beast face to face, staring at its terrifying form in disbelief. Unsure of its next move, he watched the creature plunge its snout into the current. Ashi decided not to wait around for the giant monster to strike, and immediately triggered his water manipulation. Thanks to his quick reflexes, the catfish's deadly charge was thrown off, though it almost ended in absolute disaster for him. He was glad he reacted faster, though he easily could have lost. The beast was incredibly powerful and controlled the currents as well. Suddenly, the massive fish closed the distance, forcing Ashi to stay highly alert. Right then, the monster bared its sharp teeth, looking like it was mocking the prey it was ready to swallow. Luckily, his pet crocodile, Tahua, intervened in the clash. Tahua swam up from the side, biting into the monster's flesh with crushing force. This came as an absolute shock to the massive catfish. Ashi rejoiced at the opening, knowing this was his golden opportunity. He quickly scraped his hand across the sharp rocks at the bottom, drawing fresh blood from his hand. He knew that if he failed to tame this monster, he would surely die down here. He instantly activated his Blood Mark of Subjugation. Praying his mental energy would be enough to bind the beast, he pressed his palm against the catfish, triggering an agonizing surge of mental overload. His willpower was dangerously depleted, and the system urged him to abort the process. He was locked in a brutal clash of wills. Talk about high stakes. Ashi refused to back down, even though the strain was tearing his body apart. With his remaining energy, he managed to scramble back to his boat, barely hauling himself over the side with what little strength he had left. He collapsed, gasping for air. He actually made it, escaping by a thread. Who could have guessed a simple catfish would put up such an insane struggle? He had almost lost control of his own mind, but it paid off. Swimming peacefully alongside Tahua was a surprisingly small, tame version of the catfish. A system notification popped up, offering an option to evolve the tiger catfish. But his current points were too low. He would just have to wait for later. After checking out his new aquatic companion, he turned to inspect his haul, finding a magnificent mystical fish inside the basket. Tahua swam up and opened his massive jaws, revealing a second mystical fish. This was turning out to be an incredibly lucky haul, with the boat piling high. Knowing these rare specimens would bring a massive reward, Ashi decided to consume the smaller one to test if it boosted his core strength. It tasted amazing. He kept the sharp, glowing horn as a souvenir. Ashi checked his status and smiled. He had just gained a full 18 points. This was the exact same reward as eating 18 spiritual plants. He figured a larger mystical fish would easily yield triple the points. That would quickly boost his influence percentage over his loyal pets. But for now, he had to stay patient and stick to his original plan. Ashi was saving everything for the martial arts clan fee while watching the boat. He hoped this boat, overflowing with fish, would finally be enough to cover it. Soon he arrived at the Yanshan market, where business was absolutely booming. Even though the festival had ended, a massive crowd was still gathering. They were all staring at a rare mystical fish on display. Everyone was in complete awe of the incredibly lucky fisherman. Ashi stopped to take a closer look at the lucky fisherman Chenzi-chan. He had also landed a mystical catch. Ashi began pushing forward. All he wanted was a clear view of the other man's prize. Reaching the front, Ashi claimed the town was blessed by the river god. After all, catching 2 mystical fish in a single day was purely miraculous. The crowd scoffed, thinking Ashi was just talking absolute nonsense. Chenzi-chan had only caught 1 fish. Ashi just smiled knowingly. He clarified that he was actually talking about his very own catch. Reaching into his own basket, he looked extremely pleased with himself. Out came a massive mystical fish, proudly displayed for everyone to see. But the onlookers laughed, refusing to believe such an ugly thing was rare. They immediately accused Ashi of trying to scam them with a common eyesore. Believe it or not, things were about to take a massive turn. Someone nearby announced that a rare red-blooded perch was up for sale. It was Master Hutchai, a powerful elder of the Yang warrior clan. The elder slowly approached Chenzi-chan and asked for the price. Having such a grand master interested made the young fisherman deeply honored. He did not even dare to name a price to someone so grand. Instead, he offered to accept whatever amount the elder deemed to be fair. Hutchai offered 150 fen, leaving Chenzi-chan absolutely thrilled with joy. He was eager to seal the deal, but Ashi just could not hold back. Ashi boldly stepped in, asking the powerful elder to look at his fish. The crowd gasped at the boy's sheer audacity and insolence. Offending a clan elder could bring disaster to the entire town. Hutchai examined the strange catch and identified it as a bullbream. The elder offered to buy this magnificent specimen for 325 fen. Seriously, that is a life-changing fortune that regular folks could never save. Several generations of normal households would struggle to gather that wealth. People whispered that Ashi had better spend that fortune very quickly. Chenzi-chan silently watched the sale before slipping away without a word. Ashi gathered his courage and politely asked the respected master a question. He wanted to know why his catch was worth double the perch. The elder explained that the horns of a bullbream are highly medicinal. They are used for pills that boost stamina and aid cultivation. It clears blood stagnation, making it highly useful for any martial arts clan elder. She bowed deeply, showing her sincere gratitude for the gentleman's helpful explanation. The young man was glad he had kept the horn of that fish as a souvenir. With all his fish sold and business done, Ashi sat down, counting his earnings. Suddenly, a shadow stepped forward. It was Ashi's old friend, Li Labo. Labo wrapped him in a warm hug, declaring that the whole village was proud of him. Ashi turned to his buddy, admitting he had not thanked him properly last time. For bringing the village chief, Labo jokingly offered to give him some money as an apology. It was a cheap joke, but it broke the ice. Ashi then asked his friend if he knew how much money was required to join the Yang clan. Labo replied that his father was just about to send him there, so he had all the details. A basic entry fee costs 350 coins to live there. With full room, board, and complete access to clan benefits, you would need 1,000. That is much more expensive than other sects, but there is a reason the Yang clan is considered the absolute best. Counting his savings, Ashi realized he had enough to join. Even without room and board, he eagerly told his friend that he was ready to go. With him to sign up the very next day, Labo laughed, saying he had no idea. His buddy had become so rich, but the boys quickly agreed to set out together. The following morning, Ashi briefly considered telling his friend about the mystical fish, but he decided it was best to stay quiet. Meanwhile, deep in the Zyro estate dungeons, a guard reports that Banjang has vanished into thin air. But they have managed to locate Lanezai, the last person seen with him, Lord. Zio brushed it off as a mere trifle, ordering Xiang to handle it. Personally, as for young Linzai, he was now spending almost all his time on his boat, constantly fishing and training with his loyal water spirits, so on. This quiet, late evening, the boy was completely alone on the boat, preparing a delicious meal, cooking a rich fish soup that his crocodile companion, Tawa, was eyeing. With hungry eyes, the amazing aroma filled the air, and the pet could not wait. Owner to finish preparing this delicious meal. The aroma was wonderful, and the soup turned out absolutely fantastic. Ashi poured a couple of generous bowls into the river to treat his companions. When the meal was over, Ashi felt a massive surge of water essence rushing through his body, just as expected from a mystical beast. The young cultivator felt a distinct wave of physical power. He looked at his pets, who seemed just as satisfied, and wondered where to find another rare fish. After resting a bit following the hearty dinner, Ashi decided it was finally time to level up using the points he had earned. Opening his status screen, Ashi watched his raw attributes soar. Energy coursed through his veins, revitalizing his entire body from within, gradually. Thanks to the points, the evolution of his summoned water beasts began, but the young cultivator was itching for a real fight to test this power. Ashi summoned a water stream to test his control, and it felt vastly more precise. This happened because Ashi had fed his companions a little soup, triggering their evolution so they would soon become significantly stronger. Of course, his two cute little pets still had a long road ahead before transforming into a legendary horned crocodile and a tiger catfish. Ashi finally spotted the mysterious chest that seemed to appear out of thin air. He didn't understand what this strange object was, whether it was human-made or had evolved on its own. He examined it. One side depicted a fierce yin dragon, while another showed an enormous monkey. On the third, human-headed deities with serpentine bodies were carved, and on the fourth was a mysterious emperor in black. None of that mattered. Now such musings would lead him nowhere. The young man focused entirely on mastering his water control. He planned to depart for the Yang clan tomorrow. He had to grow stronger, much stronger, to face Lord Zhou. Early the next morning, the two aspiring disciples were whisked away by carriage to another city. Having packed everything, they looked like genuine students. Libo was thrilled. He couldn't stop chatting. He kept admiring the scenery and the pleasant weather, commenting on every single detail. Soon the companions arrived in Pyongyang, and now Libo was eagerly analyzing everything in this bustling city. Before visiting their future clan, the two friends strolled the lively streets, enjoyed a tasty meal, and watched performers. Meanwhile, a man hid the dark shadows of an alley, waiting for the boy to pass. Beside him stood a very muscular, serious-looking fighter who confirmed everything. Their intel was accurate. He had personally overheard Li and Ashi talking about joining the Yang clan. They also knew that just the day before, he had sold a rare fish for a massive fortune, an unimaginable sum of money that average men could never earn. It was clear the sum was vast, and the boy would not give it up easily, but the gang leader was prepared to offer this gold to the warriors to join the clan, and they would mockingly tell the boy they were helping him spend it wisely. Soon the young friends approached the alley, ready to finally visit the clan and begin training. Libo was chatting away as usual, completely excited. He waved his fists, asking how many thugs he could beat up all at once after completing his training, but Ashi remained dead silent. He disliked idle chatter, since he had only recently tapped into his raw powers. The young man doubted his own combat skills. Suddenly, the thugs jumped out right in front of them, blocking their paths, declaring they were thrilled to see them. They demanded that the boys hand over all their silver To speed up their decision, the leader offered a brutal choice: money or their lives, but Ashi merely smirked, stating he had absolutely no intention of handing over any cash. So, he would simply take their lives instead. Hearing such bold words from a child was a shock, prompting the furious leader to lunge forward with a heavy fist, yet Ashi stood calm, completely unfazed as he braced himself and instantly engaged, throwing precise, devastating punches and elbow strikes at the street thugs. It became an absolute shock to the remaining bandits when they watched their strong comrades get utterly decimated without even landing a blow. Bleeding heavily onto the cobblestones, Libo watched in sheer panic. Completely drenched in cold sweat, he had never witnessed such blinding speed before. In exactly 9 moves, the entire gang lay defeated, leaving everyone in utter shock. Looking at his hand, he really wanted to test his strength on that solid stone too. But right now he was just as stunned as everyone else standing around him. As expected, his speed had increased dramatically. Now he had to adapt to his own body. Libo wanted answers. When did his friend manage to become so incredibly strong? He truly believed it. Ashi didn't even need a master at this rate. Ashi had no idea what to say, so he joked that he was probably just a hidden genius. Now, having fought for real for the first time, Ashi was even more eager to join the martial arts clan. No hesitation. He wanted to hurry so they would not be late for registration. At the clan, Brother Shin was there greeting all of the applicants. He welcomed them, telling the boys they could call him Brother Shin. The boys bowed their heads in deep respect. Brother Shin then led them to the man who would assess their skills and introduce the clan. Brother Shin explained and demonstrated everything clearly as they walked along. He introduced the boys to Brother who was actually a direct disciple of Master Yang. They kept walking deeper into the clan's vast grounds, when suddenly Ashi spotted the wealthy man who had bought fish from him the day before. Brother Hu recognized him instantly. He knew that face. He quickly began explaining to Brother Shin exactly how he knew the boy. Brother Hu explained that for his own cultivation, he had used the special properties of the bullhead fish, which he bought from this young man. Brother Shin smiled. This was an auspicious sign. It meant Brother Hu would make a perfect mentor, and the boys could stay the night. Once the formalities were finished, Brother Hu called them over to assess their natural talent, which, let's be real, made the friends super nervous. But their new mentor told them not to worry. He was just trying to find the absolute perfect cultivation style for each of them. Ashi gathered his courage. He confessed that they did not even understand what cultivation actually meant. They needed Brother Hu to explain the basics first. Brother Hu gladly obliged. The martial path consisted of 4 epic stages: skin, flesh, bone, and blood. First, the skin stage, where the body becomes tougher than an ox, boosting defense. Talk about an absolute tank. At the flesh stage, a warrior's physical strength increases 100-fold. He can lift any massive weight with one hand, easily and effortlessly. At the bone stage, nothing can restrain the warrior's explosive inner energy. This allows them to easily shatter solid stones with their bare hands. Finally, at the blood stage, the body reaches the absolute pinnacle. However, all of this can be summed up in one word: cultivation. Naturally, no matter how hard you train, the human body has limits. To overcome them, you need 2 things: secret techniques and special potions. The boys listened with their mouths wide open as he explained everything. By techniques, he meant the specialized methods of martial cultivation. For example, there are 3 main styles common in the Yang clan. If practiced correctly, anyone can learn and master them without issue. Ashi seemed to be soaking up every single word, repeating everything after. He already understood the physical techniques. Now, he had to master the elixirs. Imagine techniques as a steep, slippery, and incredibly dangerous staircase. To climb it quickly and safely, you absolutely need a sturdy handrail. That is where potions come in. like the bull bream Ashi sold yesterday. It acts like a potion. It helps you climb that ladder much faster. Hui realized he was dumping way too much complex information on the boys. He told them not to rush since they were only starting their journey. Focus on every step, but Ashi, he could not wait to start. He asked the senior disciple to test and determine their natural talents. Other warriors gathered around the courtyard, watching with keen interest as the senior prepared the test. Meanwhile, Liu Yangkai had heard rumors about an unusual young prodigy from his companion, Zion. The man confirmed this was the one. Target confirmed. He requested the boy be quietly escorted off the territory. Zhao Yuan promised to handle the rest himself without causing any trouble. No trouble at all. Suddenly, Jiang appeared before his master with news. Lin Zai was only 15 years old, the prime candidate for potion extraction. He was the young master's age, and better yet, a helpless orphan. Catch Lin Zai, and the young lord's weak condition could be cured. Lord Zhao listened intently. His son, Zhao Yuan, had been frail since birth. Finding suitable matches for the elixir of immortality was an absolute nightmare. But this boy was flawless. Jiang added that the kid had other plans. Lin Zai was trying to join the Yang clan, complicating their move. Knowing Yang Dong's fierce nature, making a move would be extremely dangerous. The young master overheard this and saw Jiang drop a piece of paper. It was a portrait of Lin Zai. Zhao Yuan quickly snatched it off the floor. He needed the pearls of immortality. Anyone in his way would die. Back at the academy, Lei Libo was still restless and highly confused. He couldn't grasp why his friend possessed an elite bone structure while his was average. Ashi could only claim he was a natural genius to avoid explaining the truth. With the first test cleared, the real grind was only just beginning. They had to hurry. There, the young fisherman Jai Cheng was waiting. He was the same guy who sold fish the day before for cheaper. The boys were stunned, especially Lei Libo, who immediately got defensive. He aggressively demanded to know what the fisherman was doing there. Jai Cheng calmly replied that anyone could apply, nearly sparking a massive fight. But Lin Zai stepped in, reminding them they were from the same village. They needed to stick together as friends. Ashi then warmly welcomed Jai Cheng. But the boy, who was 2 years older, just nodded back coldly. He was a skilled fisherman and a close friend of this body's previous owner. Ashi sincerely asked his old friend if he had decided to train too. The boy stopped sulking. He admitted he wanted to become strong too. It turned out he had saved his fishing money for the entry fee. He finally scraped the coins together. Ashi suggested they head in together. The senior disciple was already starting the next lesson at the drill ground. If they did not hurry up right now, they would be in serious trouble. This was pure hell. No modern soldier had ever dreamed of enduring training this brutal. The boys were trembling all over. They refused to quit, but they barely had enough strength left to finish the workout circuit, who he finally called. A break, letting the students to rest before teacher Lu took over after lunch. Completely drained, the boys slumped under a tree to rest. Trying to catch their breath, they felt totally weak, but suddenly they heard a loud voice sneering that the clan territory had started to smell like fish. Yang Kai and his crew walked up, loudly complaining that these newcomers had no right to be here because they had already stunk up the entire place. But then he offered a deal if they each paid him 100 fen, he would let them stay. Leibo wanted to throw hands immediately. But Zai Cheng held him back, warning him not to disgrace their mentor, Brother Hui. Li Zai, meanwhile, was calculating if he had enough strength to take on all 3 bullies. Yang Kai kept provoking them, asking if they were looking for a beating. He had almost reached the peak of the skin refinement stage and wanted to test his power on someone. Li Zai knew that in the water, no skin stage would save this boaster. But before the fight could erupt, a stern voice rang out, instantly bringing them all to attention. Hui told the older Guys to drop and hold a plank for 30 minutes if they had nothing better to do. Yang Kai sneered that the rookies got lucky, but warned them too. Remember that cowards had no place here. Hui raised his voice, asking if they wanted a real punishment instead of listening to his orders. The bullies quickly backed off and walked away. Labo was still boiling with rage. But the young fisherman Chen showed a level of calm wisdom far beyond his years, pointing out that complaining behind their backs would not change a thing. Li Zai realized this was just more proof that he needed to become stronger as fast as possible. Suddenly, he turned and told his friends to make an excuse for him to the teacher because he had to slip away back to his village. His sudden departure left them completely confused, unable to figure out why Li Zai was behaving so strangely today. Meanwhile, Li Zai raced home, his mind racing with thoughts of the Lotus Pond, the looming dangers and his enemies. He had to know what was happening there. By late evening, his worried friends were waiting for him near the entrance to the Martial Arts Academy, wondering if they should go look for him. After all, he had not returned yet, but he surely had a good reason for leaving like that. Soon, tension flared between Labo and Zai Chang. They were ready to throw hands when they suddenly felt a hostile presence nearby. A familiar voice sneered, mocking them for being so easily cornered again. Yang Kai stepped out with a cruel grin, thrilled to find them alone. He bragged that brother Hui was not around to save these two losers now. Vowing to crush them both, Yang Kai claimed he was just cleaning up the fishy garbage that did not belong in the academy. Meanwhile, Li Zai was swimming deep underwater alongside his pets. His catfish and crocodile companions had almost reached the peak of their skin refinement stage, but suddenly something startled them. Now his beasts are crying out for their master to protect them. He has to think fast. He needs to figure out what kind of beast is lurking out there, parting the thick seaweed. Spear gripped tightly in his hands, he searches the murky depths for this terrifying creature. Massive tracks left in the sand suggest it is some kind of giant. Then, a massive club looms right in front of him. He stares, wondering what kind of bizarre seaweed or tree formation this massive stick is. Suddenly, his sensory range expands, allowing him to sense the deep waters with perfect clarity. Soon, he will reveal exactly what this bizarre weapon is and who owns it. Finally, deep in the pitch-black depths, the silhouette of a massive monster emerges, its glowing eyes locked right onto the young man. To his surprise, it is a crab. Anyone would think it is just a normal crustacean, if not for the absolute gargantuan size of this aquatic beast. He remembers his brother saying that any animal shedding its skin at this stage becomes mystical. That means this crab is highly intelligent, and its massive size definitely proves it. Still, it cannot be completely invincible. Otherwise, Tahu and Kai would never have been able to escape, but looking at the massive opponent, he doubts he can survive this. After all, he has no real plan other than a burning desire to grow stronger. Step by step, in this dangerous moment, his mind drifts back to old man Jiang, who always called him a shameless rascal, just like his father. Then the smug face of Liu Yang Kai flashes before him. That bully always insisted there is no place for cowards in the clan. Now he realizes that danger and opportunity have always walked hand in hand. Real change always demands risk, truly. Meaningful moments in life happen by chance, while structured plans usually fail us. Now the young man realizes he is absolutely not ready to accept a miserable fate. If destiny throws him a lifeline, he has to seize it. With that, he unleashes his water current ability. He remembers how old man Ban Xing Jiang tried to steal his shot at a new life, but that old villain is dead now, and if this overgrown crab wants to take his lotus pond, they will have to fight for it. Meanwhile, back on land, heavy blows rain down on his friends. Naturally, they are completely outmatched. Liu Yang Kai looks on with a smug grin. He mocks the rookies for having some spine, but demands to know where their sneaky friend Lane Zai is hiding. Lilbo is not the smartest guy. But he has absolute courage. He smashes a jagged rock right over Yang Kai's head. This is an incredibly reckless move, because there is no way these rookies stand a chance against these trained fighters. They are only earning themselves a much worse beating. Furious, Yang Kai keeps trash-talking and pounding them, snarling that they are digging their own graves. He orders his lackeys to guard the gate while he takes his sweet time torturing these weaklings. Chang refuses to sit back and take a beating, charging straight at Yang Kai instead. But the power gap is just too massive. Predictably, the older, stronger bully easily overpowers the brave young fisherman, knocking him down. He relentlessly beats the boys, but they refuse to beg for mercy. Enraged, Yang Kai threatens to gouge out those defiant, fearless eyes. How will they train martial arts if they are blind? Coldly, Yang Kai moves his finger right toward Lilbo's eye, as Chang desperately screams for him to stop. Leave his friend alone, demanding they stop, but the cold finger drew closer and closer to the creature's eye, and a brutal shriek echoed through the cavern. The giant crab crushed a massive boulder into tiny pieces with its heavy claw. It was obvious that this beast possessed unreal power. It hurled the stone fragments straight at Ashi, forcing the young man to dive out of the way. He quickly scrambled to strike back, but the shell seemed entirely impenetrable. Ashi commanded his crocodile to bite down on the claw, successfully distracting the beast. Seizing the moment, Ashi channeled his water flow magic to strike, but this monster was incredibly tough, and taking it down meant burning through all his energy. Already, he felt himself slipping, losing his grip. Suddenly, the crab flexed its massive claws and shattered his current. Breaking free entirely, it tried to back away, but his tamed catfish rushed in to support the crocodile, landing heavy strikes. Ashi joined the fray, throwing his own attacks to keep the beast off balance, but the giant crab easily swatted him aside. Ashi went flying backward, crashing hard. This only fueled his rage, as he realized the monster wanted to finish him. Standing tall without backing down, he watched as the towering crab loomed over him, raising its weapon for a final blow. But Ashi knew there had to be a weak point somewhere, slipping under the crushing strike. He let his pet swarm the monster while he scanned its massive body. Where exactly was the flaw in that armor? Now watch closely. The beast was constantly protecting its underside, shielding it from any possible threat. No matter what, it kept its belly covered. Ashi realized that was the sweet spot. He quickly calculated his next move. It had to be a high-pressure water thrust directly through his spear, but with his drained energy, he could only manage 2 spinning rotations. Still, that should triple the weapon's speed. He had to make it count. Pushing past his limits, blood dripped from his eyes and nose as his energy plummeted to 0. He was on the verge of losing control of his beasts. The system screens flashed, warning him to abort immediately, but Ashi refused to back down. He was finishing this right now. Ignoring the agonizing pain ripping through his body, he committed to the strike. Pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into the water current, he drove the spear straight into the crab's soft belly. The weapon sank deep, piercing clean through the monster's only unarmored spot. Ashi gasped, barely registering the victory, as the giant beast finally collapsed. He had won, then darkness claimed him and he blacked out. Ashi woke up on the shore, finding his 2 loyal pets staring down at him with wide eyes. They had dragged him out of the deep water and kept watch over his unconscious body. A splitting headache throbbed behind his eyes, a harsh reminder to avoid overusing that dangerous technique. He just was not ready yet. Looking around, he reached for the rock he thought he was leaning against. But his hand touched something else, something cold and hard, it turned out. His pets had hauled the massive crab carcass right up onto the shore. The very beast they had barely defeated together. Ashi stared at it, realizing the slain beast was packed with rich water essence. His pets quickly investigated. They did this while their master lay unconscious, spotting a strange belly bulge. It belonged to a female crab. They eagerly pointed it out to him. Cracking open her shell, Ashi discovered precious roe. He could easily eat it. But a better idea struck him. Why not try to tame this wild beast? The mother was already dead, but her unborn babies still remained inside the eggs. Ashi wondered if a blood contract could subdue them. It was time to find out. Using a jagged stone, he sliced his palm. Blood ran hot and fresh. Drawing taming runes with his blood, he pressed his hand against the egg. The ritual activated. Fortunately, it worked, and a faint silhouette appeared on the shell. A sharp crack echoed. The hard shell split open, revealing a tiny claw. It was hatching. Slowly but surely, the little creature broke through to the light. This surprisingly adorable little crab stared at its master, ready to serve him. A system notification confirmed the success. He had officially tamed the stone crab. Ashi now held 3 different elements, though they still needed time to mature. Taming complete, he immediately prepared some meat from the giant crab legs. It was incredibly rich. Eating it would flood him with concentrated water essence. It is a simple rule. Stronger prey always yields far greater physical power. And right now, Ashi's internal water essence was multiplying at an insane rate. He inspected his physical form. The transformation was immediate and incredibly dramatic. He had grown noticeably taller, his body radiating a new, commanding presence. His battle wounds vanished. In their place was a surge of raw strength. His beasts chirped happily. They could easily sense their master's explosive upgrade. His water fusion percentage was rising fast, climbing close to 40%. He could feel the power pulsing in his veins. It was a wild, unfamiliar sensation. Master Hutch once said that with rigorous training and the right spirit resources, they could easily break past the skin stage. Ashi believed him. He generously shared the remaining crab meat and rich roe with his beasts. They devoured it eagerly, but gained only a minor energy boost. He didn't feed the hatchling its mother's flesh. That felt way too cruel. Once he reached the peak of this stage, he would secure his place. As a true member of the Yang clan, the Zio family couldn't touch him. His resolve was set. It was time for Ashi to head back. He needed to prepare for the grueling morning, training on the main grounds. Meanwhile, a confrontation was brewing. Liu Yangkai was about to blind Li Bo's eye, when a sharp, commanding voice rang out from above, ordering him to stop. It was Lu Zio. Glaring with clenched fists, he demanded proper behavior. He ordered him to behave with dignity, instead of breaking the clan's sacred rules. The instructor was furious, warning him that rule breakers faced immediate, permanent expulsion. There would be no second chances or training. Liu Yangkai panicked. Realizing he was in deep trouble, he immediately bowed and apologized. He claimed he was merely executing the orders of young Master Zio. This caught Lu Zio completely off guard. It was a massive shock. Yet Yang Kai remained incredibly defiant, asking his mentor a very bold question. Whom should he obey, the rules of their clan or the Zio family? It was clear this topic touched a serious sore spot for Zio. It turned out he had only left his family a few days back, almost forgetting who his own master even was. Worse, he was instantly reminded of what he would have been. If Master Zio had not taken him and his father in, he had to stay quiet and act like an obedient dog. At this point, Zio could not stand up for himself. Besides, he could not forget his father was still held back at the Zio estate. Zio immediately thought of his father, knowing he had to protect his family and endure anything, so the boy bowed his head and apologized directly to Yang Kai, the bully end. His lackeys burst out laughing in sheer delight, calling him a pathetic little mutt and a good little dog who had to serve them, but their mocking laughter cut short the moment a glob of spit splashed directly onto Yang Kai's face. Everyone froze in absolute silence, staring down at the beaten fisherman Chen, who lay on the ground, laughing. The fisherman gasped out that he was utterly disgusted by Yang Kai. calling him a pathetic, worthless coward. Suddenly, Libo was slammed hard too. The dirt and Yang Kai stomped a heavy boot onto Libo's elbow, preparing to crush it. Libo shrieked in agony as Yang Kai mocked them, sneering that Jai Chang could try playing the hero all he wanted. He promised not to touch Jai Chang, but his weak little friend would suffer a painful lesson instead. That would show them who was truly boss. Jai Chang knew he had lost. He refused to betray his friend, hoping Yang Kai would vent all that rage on him instead. Yang Kai was absolutely drunk on his own power. He loomed over the helpless boys, knowing their older brother was not around to stand up for them. But right then, several of Yang Kai's lackeys were sent flying through the air by massive strikes. It happened in a flash, catching everyone off guard as a dark silhouette emerged slowly from the heavy fog. Stranger stepped forward, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. The beaten, bloody boys instantly recognized their friend Linzai, who looked completely horrified upon seeing how brutally his friends had been thrashed. Pure, unadulterated fury consumed Linzai's entire being. He growled that he would knock out every single one of Yang Kai's teeth. Meanwhile, two old elders quietly watched the chaos unfold from a nearby rooftop. Hutchai bowed and apologized to his master, taking full responsibility for the mess. He had been busy celebrating, reaching the peak of the blood stage, and lost track of time. Watching the brutal scene, Hutchai felt deeply horrified because he never expected Zayu to be so cold-blooded and stand by idly while these weak children got beaten half to death. But the Grand Elder replied that in reality, Zayu only wore a mask. Deep down, he was a good person. But he was bound by too many heavy chains. That was the main reason. Zayu had been unable to break through to the peak of the blood stage. After all, a warrior without courage is no better than a corpse. Hutch urged that they must step in and help Linzai, who had just joined them. Since Yang Kai had already peaked in the blood stage, the young boy stood no chance alone. Yang Dong agreed with his disciple, but recommended they wait and keep watching from the shadows. The master could sense that this newcomer possessed a remarkably strange and promising blood energy. Meanwhile, Yang Kai only sneered, amused by the boy who was trying so hard to play tough. Lion's Eye charged forward, aiming to strike Yang Kai without wasting a single second on useless words. He refused to waste time on empty talk, but Yang Kai was so ridiculously overconfident. Deep down, Yang Kai felt a surge of fear, quickly ordering his goons to seize the fisherman. Before those lackeys could even move, Lion's Eye leaped into the air. He delivered a sweeping kick that sent several opponents flying at once. A few brutal punches and elbows quickly put the rest of the henchmen down. With his goons defeated, a furious Yang Kai stepped forward to handle things himself. He glared at the boy, convinced this newcomer stood absolutely no chance against him. Even though his crew lay defeated, Yang Kai was determined to show off his real power. He wanted to show exactly what a master at the peak skin stage could do. Yang Kai unleashed a flurry of strikes, but Lion's Eye effortlessly blocked and dodged them all. Waiting for the perfect opening, Lion's Eye slipped past a punch and countered with immense force. He landed a brutal blow to the jaw, leaving Yang Kai coughing up mouthfuls of blood. Lion's Eye smiled, realizing this bully was just a weakling who preyed on the helpless. He was nothing more than a coward who only picked on the helpless. The coward pulled a knife and stabbed it deep into Lion's Eye's body, spilling blood. Even with his teeth knocked out, Yang Kai smirked as blood pooled from the boy's chest. He mocked the boy, shouting that no one would ever defend a worthless orphan fisherman. Wondering what the boy had even hoped to achieve, Lion's Eye suddenly grabbed the attacker's hand. The blade sunk deeper, slicing into his arm, but the young man barely even flinched. Feeling no pain, Lion's Eye looked at this pathetic coward with absolute disgust. Now Lion's Eye was ready to strike with all his remaining strength. Pinning him down, he let loose a punch that sent more teeth flying into the dirt. Crushed and bloody on the ground, Yang Kai desperately cried out for Lu Zio's help. The instructor had simply stood on the sidelines, watching the entire fight unfold. Yang Kai could not understand why his teacher was standing there like a statue. His own student was being beaten, yet he did absolutely nothing to protect him. Before anyone could move, a loud shout echoed and a massive sword slammed into the ground. The blade embedded itself beside them as the great clan leader Yang Dongsheng finally appeared. Emerging from the mist alongside Master Hu, he sternly called out the bullies by name. Having seen enough of them tormenting the newcomers, the elder delivered a harsh verdict. He announced that the troublemakers were officially expelled from the martial arts clan. Lu Xiao was immediately ordered to report to the seclusion hall for a severe reckoning. Lion's Eye stared at the powerful master, unable to believe his own eyes. Was he truly standing in front of the legendary clan leader, Yang Dongsheng? But panic set in as Lion's Eye realized he had just fought right before the elder. He was sure he would be kicked out of the martial arts clan next. The boy recalled how Yang Kai had just mocked him as a helpless orphan. It would be devastating to lose everything he worked for because of a worthless bully. And yet, he did not regret stepping up to protect his friends. Standing before him, Yang Dongsheng asked the boy if he wanted to be his disciple. Lion's Eye froze, completely unable to believe what he was hearing. He looked up to see the master holding out his hand in earnest. This was no joke. By the next morning, whispers filled the Yang family estate. Servants gossiped about the shocking news that the master had taken a 9th disciple. Everyone said this new disciple was exceptionally handsome. Suddenly, his room door opened. A young maid peered inside, looking specifically for her young master, Linzai, she. And several other maids brought formal ceremonial robes sent by his new older siblings. The young girl offered to help the handsome youth change his attire, but Li and Shay thanked them, took the garments, and insisted he could dress on his own. They asked the maids to leave. Even now, Linzai could barely believe it. 2 weeks had already flown by since his brutal clash with Lu Yang Kai. Fortunately, the severe injuries on his companions had healed rapidly, all thanks to Master Yang's incredible medical care. Linzai finally felt like he belonged somewhere. With a supportive master and new siblings, things were looking bright. Soon, the perfect moment would arrive to make the corrupt Xiao family pay. Revenge was close. Hui later recalled how Linzai's life had nearly ended. His survival was a miracle. Nobody expected a fresh, untrained recruit to win. Who could expect a brand new recruit to defeat an expert who had already reached the absolute peak of the skin refining stage? Master Yang's 2 loyal disciples had been listening to this legendary story for 2 solid weeks now. They well remembered that their master took an instant liking to this young boy. He must be a true dragon among men. Still, the 5th sister suspected someone was jealous. Perhaps some older disciples resented this fast-rising newcomer. What had Chihai gifted him? To know what special treasure Chihai had offered, Chihai quickly spoke up. He had gifted him his precious tungsten armor, proving he felt no jealousy at all. He was just tired of hearing the exact same story over and over again. Hutch warned his sister to stop teasing Chihai, who worked hard to afford such a gift. Laughter filled the room as their new brother, Linzai, finally entered. He looked incredibly sharp, proudly wearing the gifts his new companions gave him. Linzai bowed deeply with immense gratitude, showing his respect to everyone. Then Long stepped forward, admitting he had not presented his own offering yet. The older brother reached deep into his robes to pull out a special present. It was a heavy block of raw tungsten steel, prepared specially for Linzai. With this, Linzai could visit a master smith and request any weapon. The skilled blacksmith would forge him whatever custom weapon he desired from the metal. This incredible gift was truly magnificent, and Linzai was absolutely thrilled by it. Once all the gifts were successfully handed out and greetings made, they decided to move. They could not keep their esteemed master waiting. Meanwhile, tension gripped the Xiao family estate. The air was thick with anxiety. Zhang nervously delivered some grim news. They had recovered Ban Xing's corpse, but a critical item was missing. It had been stolen right out of his stomach, an impossible theft. Lord Zio flew into a blind rage, violently striking his useless assistant. He roared that they were facing absolute ruin if the truth got out. If the imperial authorities investigated, someone was going to pay the price. Lord Zio warned Zhang that his head would be on the chopping block. Zhang desperately protested, swearing that the young Lin Zai was responsible for this. He felt absolutely certain that the boy had murdered Ban Xing himself. But Lord Zio knew Lin Zai was now under Master Yang's protection. Provoking him meant war. Did Zhang truly dare to cross them? He grabbed his assistant, demanding that Seneng find that object no matter what. It had to be done immediately. Meanwhile, the Lord had special plans for young Lin Zai. Over at the Yang estate, a formal initiation ceremony was already underway. Clan leader Yang Dongsheng praised Lin Zai, calling him noble, brave, and unyielding. He then asked if the boy would accept becoming the clan leader's personal disciple. Without hesitation, the young man agreed, but joining the clan came with strict conditions. From now on, he had to maintain absolute obedience and strict discipline. He must show deep respect to his mentors and senior classmates at all times. Bullying the weak or abusing his high position for personal gain was strictly forbidden. Bowing his head, Lin Zai replied that he understood and accepted these core rules. The clan leader smiled warmly, announcing the very final step of the ritual. Once the boy drank a traditional bowl of tea, he would officially become the 9th disciple. From that moment, Yang Dongsheng would serve as the young man's personal guardian. With that kind of backing, nobody's messing with him ever again. Thus began his grueling daily routine, packed with endless, exhausting training sessions. The exhausted boys could barely stand on their feet before finally getting a break. They only had 30 minutes to rest. Naturally, the other students started whispering. Everyone was gossiping about how Lin Zai had managed to become the master's direct disciple. It was a massive, rags-to-riches breakthrough that shocked the entire school. They also discussed how Lu Yang Kai and his whole gang had been expelled. Many suspected that some incredibly shady characters were pulling the strings behind them. With that corrupt group gone, the martial arts program felt thoroughly cleaned up. Hearing these whispers from around the courtyard, Zio Hai Yuan was absolutely boiling with rage. He cursed that damn Lin Zai, who had single-handedly ruined all of his plans. Meanwhile, Huchai was conducting a private lesson, asking Lin Zai about his cultivation knowledge. Specifically, he asked about the 4 barriers within the legendary 7 paths. Since Lin Zai was completely clueless, Huchai began naming them, starting with Galloping Horse. Wolf Smoke, Fierce Tiger, Crushing Elephant, Divine Dragon, Crucible, and Transcendent Rainbow. At the Galloping Horse peak, you can effortlessly halt charging beasts. You can stop a dozen charging horses. Next, Cultivating Wolf Smoke to its peak makes a warrior far stronger and deadlier than an entire pack of rabid wolves. Choosing the path of the Fierce Tiger boosts your raw power to insane levels. At this stage, even your mere aura is enough to terrify ordinary folk. If you walk the path of the Destroying Elephant, the very earth will shake. Every single step splits mountains and calms roaring rivers, a power fit for a general. At the next stage, the disciple rises to become a divine dragon. They fly like a celestial dragon, completely freed from all earthly limitations. This makes them a holy national hero. Honestly, Huchai knew almost nothing about the crucible path, but masters at that level ascend straight to the heavens. This sounded absolutely fascinating, making Lin Zai wonder if achieving such immortality would finally let him return to his original home. Curious, Lin Zai asked which path their own master had currently reached. Huchai simply smiled, asking Lin Zai if he knew how many local clans existed in this region. The young man paused to calculate before answering. Based on his research, there were exactly 3 clans. He was correct. As an answer, the other 2 clans only stayed here because they couldn't afford a Better place, Yang Dongxiang chose this city simply because it was his hometown. But in truth, he was the only martial artist around who had attained the way of the fierce tiger. Lin Zai considered this, fully confident that with his system he could reach that exact peak. I decided to wrap up today's training right there, reminding his student that cultivation cannot be rushed. Lin Zai must progress steadily, minding every tiny detail while learning to maintain perfect balance, but he was thinking that since the Zio family was no longer threat, he just needed to catch another mystical fish to finally break through his skin barrier. As soon as he could, the young man went fishing. Tahu proved to be an incredible fishing partner, and thanks to his skills, their boat was soon overflowing. Eventually, Lin Zai would need to make some larger gear, but unfortunately, no mystical fish bit the hook today. Still, Lin Zai decided to check his status profile. It turned out his synchronization rate had risen to nearly 37%. At this rate, he would soon reach the skin stage. Suddenly, a strange object looking like a bird's feather drifted right in front of him. At that moment, the entire lake began to boil, tossing his small boat violently from side to side. On top of that, a horrific, high-pitched screech began grating on his ears. The young man, "Wait, what is that?" Through the spray, a massive beast duel is unfolding, a giant toad and a monstrous bird. That toad was desperately trying to drag its prey underwater. It had whipped out its impossibly long tongue, wrapping it tight around the bird's leg to keep it from escaping, but the bird fought back, breaking free and sending the colossal toad crashing backward into the lake. Its massive fall kicked up a giant wave, instantly threatening Lin Zai's life. The water engulfed the boat, washing his hard-earned catch back into the depths. This entire fishing trip was a complete disaster. Suddenly, the bird let out an aggressive screech, unleashing a devastating shockwave. Lin Zai tried to endure the blast, but the invisible mental assault was simply too overwhelming for his mind. Soon, the unconscious young cultivator began sinking straight down toward the dark lake bed, completely motionless. Fortunately, he eventually woke up on the grassy shore, realizing his loyal beasts had saved him yet again by dragging him out of the water. Shaking his head, Lin Zai tried to piece everything together. A single screech from that monstrous flying beast had completely knocked him out. But think about it, any predator that can hunt down such a terrifying bird must be even more nightmarish. Sighing deeply, Lin Zai lay on the shore feeling thoroughly defeated. Without his catch or boat, his breakthrough would have to wait a while. Just then, his pet crocodile Taua swam up, splashing to get his attention with some urgent, unmistakable signals. Opening its massive jaws, it revealed a glowing red perch, proving all was not lost. Now Lin Zai could finally start training. Vital blood energy directly reflects a fighter's physical power, but true mastery isn't that simple. One doesn't become unstoppable just by having massive reserves. Instead, it requires breaking down his own physical body to forge true, raw inner strength from deep within. Thus, energy is merely the result, yet it serves to strengthen the core. Beneficial endless cycle. The young man lit an incense stick, sticking it in a bowl of sand. Sitting there focused and pensive, he inhaled the scent and tuned in for a breakthrough. His older brother had brought him this incense, saying it helped with training. The key to overcoming his skin barrier was concentrating blood energy right around his chest chakra. The meat of the mystical fish was supposed to speed up this process. Lin Zai prepared the fish, caught by the crocodile, and prepared to eat it. This was far from his first attempt. He had been gradually growing in physical and spiritual strength, leaving him just a hair's breadth away. I had said that to overcome this barrier, he must concentrate energy to stimulate his skin and muscle fascia, referring to the power surging deep within a warrior. During intense physical training, the true source of life, he waited until warmth spread through his chest, then directed it through his bones and lungs, until it reached his outer shell and burst outward. This is how the peak of The skin stage is reached, feeling as if the entire body is ablaze with fire. Linzai did everything his master taught. This was already his 40th attempt, but as it turned out, not his last. Checking his profile again, he realized he still had not broken through. Talk about frustrating, but the young man had a strong premonition. Once he reached 50% fusion with water essence, something in his abilities would change dramatically. Linzai noted they were out of meat and spiritual plants were not helping, so he would have to go fishing again. At that moment, a sudden knock hit the door. Despite it being early morning, it seemed guests had arrived. They were men from his home village, the fathers of Jai Chang and Li Libo. They said they saw the young man fishing late yesterday and came to check on him. Linzai was surprised. As an orphan, he never expected guests. He greeted the men and immediately grew wary, realizing that something had likely happened. The men admitted that nothing serious was wrong. They simply had not seen their sons in a few days and wanted to know if Linzai knew where they were. Linzai began to make excuses, explaining that he returned late and forgot to mention that everything had gone well for the whole group. They caught the mentors' attention, got their own separate room, and decided to stay with the clan for training. He could not tell the fathers that their sons were afraid to return home because their wounds had not healed yet. The men were pleased and said they had always believed they could raise future warriors. Now they understood. Their sons had a great future ahead of them, so there was no need to worry. The men also mentioned that the village was planning to hold another sacrificial ceremony for the river god. Such a ritual had been held just a few months ago, but wait, a wild event occurred yesterday, leaving the villagers with no choice but to proceed. The day before, the sky god leaped from the water and seized a giant fiery bird. They say the heavens themselves split open. At that moment, the men also saw this in the lake and decided to donate money and take part in the ceremony. After saying goodbye to the guests, the young man set off for the mountain lake with the lotus cave. Holding a sharpened stick in his hands, he leaped into the water and began to sink to the bottom. Linzai focuses on training his water powers, desperate to see how much stronger he has become. He leaps and dives back down. He trains hard. By practicing alongside his spirit pets, he can now manipulate 150 liters of liquid. Compressing it creates a high-pressure stream that holds a completely different force. While submerged in water, his physical strength explodes. His power shatters limits. Fortis is easy now. But during a routine spar, his training stick snaps, leaving him weaponless. He remembers hearing legendary stories from his martial arts days about powerful spiritual weapons, capable of regenerating and growing far stronger over time. But crafting them requires incredibly rare treasures, things the young man simply does not have. Linzai has zero funds to buy such a weapon. Buying one is out of the question, with no clear way to obtain one. Suddenly his thoughts are cut short. His pet catfish, Chonky, swims over. It brings wild news. A strange fire is burning deep underwater. Linzai follows the beast down, guided straight to the source of heat. Buried under the rocks and sand, he uncovers a massive, glowing feather. It likely dropped from that giant bird fighting the water toad yesterday. Linzai carefully inspects this bizarre, breathtakingly gorgeous object in his hands. It looks like a priceless artifact, but he still needs to gather more details on the mystical bird. Linzai hatches a plan. He is already planning to visit the blacksmith shop of Lu Gong's brother to pick out a new weapon. Maybe they would know something about this mysterious find. Deciding to bring it along, he waits for his first moment of free time to search for the forge, since he is still unfamiliar with the city streets. He simply wanders around, hoping to stumble upon the right place. Suddenly his eyes catch a massive column of black smoke billowing into the sky. Curious, he decides to see if that is where the smithy is. Guided by the distant rhythm of a heavy hammer striking hot metal, he eventually finds the workshop. Lu Gong welcomes his younger brother, sweat dripping down his face as he works. It is boiling hot inside, Linzai explains his morning discovery. He found something incredible and wanted his older brother's expert opinion. Linzai opens his bag. Nestled safely inside is a brilliant, glowing crimson phoenix feather. Talk about a major upgrade waiting to happen. Lu Gong stares at it in absolute awe, recognizing it as a genuine treasure. Linzai is thrilled by the reaction and asks his older brother for more details. Lu Gong is always happy to share his vast knowledge with his brother. He explains it is a truly legendary find. The Crimson Phoenix is an exceptionally rare, legendary, and mystical creature. When facing absolute death, it pours all its life energy into its feathers. Then the bird sheds its plumage, scattering them across the vast world. But the single feather holding the ultimate concentration of life is called the golden crimson feather. This item alone grants the magical beast total rebirth, fully restoring its body. Linzai is absolutely thrilled by the legend. But Lu Gong does not want to disappoint his happy younger brother. He downplayed the feather. Still, he admitted to Linzai that even that was a very rare find. Linzai was lost. He had absolutely no idea what to do with such an incredible treasure. Lu Gong pointed out that if he were in Linzai's shoes, he wouldn't simply absorb its energy. Instead, he would forge a spiritual weapon, a real masterpiece. That was exactly Linzai's plan. He confessed he had already nearly decided on the perfect weapon. Recalling his brutal battle with the giant crab, he made his decision. A spear. It would be absolutely perfect for his unique underwater techniques. He told the blacksmith directly that he was choosing a spear. Lu Gong was quite surprised. In their clan, almost nobody ever chose a weapon like that. Sure, reach is great, but spears are notoriously difficult to control in battle. Linzai insisted he had thought it through, asking him to use that feather. Crafting it this way would finally give the young man his very own spiritual weapon. Seeing that the decision was completely final, Lu Gong simply accepted the request. He promised to craft the weapon himself and send word the moment it was ready. Linzai thanked him. As he left the shop, he noticed a massive column of smoke. He asked about it. Lu Gong instantly became quiet and deeply sad. The painful subject clearly bothered him as he clenched his fists in silence. He explained the smoke was coming from Faha Temple, where a massive fire had erupted. It was gone. The beautiful temple had burned down completely that morning. Worse yet, something completely unnatural appeared right inside the raging flames. Linzai listened carefully, still completely unable to grasp what he truly meant. Lu Gong revealed that mountain demons were spotted inside the burning temple. They likely started the fire. Just that morning, there had been no sign of trouble. Everything was peaceful at Faha Temple. Suddenly, a woman emerged from the deep forest. She was covered in deep scratches, and she was clearly pregnant. Just then, a young monk sweeping the steps heard her desperate cries for help. The poor woman could barely stand, her strength completely drained from her. She stared at the young monk and begged him to save her before collapsing. When she finally woke up, she saw the monk and an old priest nearby. They wanted answers. They asked what had happened to her. But she could not remember how she got there, completely lost. She explained that her home was actually far away in Hatsu County. However, she had traveled to Pinyin City months ago to visit her relatives. On the road, bandits attacked, cloaked figures. She could not see their faces. They blindfolded her and dragged her away to a truly terrifying place. Pure horror, the poor woman could not understand where they had taken her. Captives were tortured there until they were nothing but mere shadows of themselves. It was a living hell. The monk listened, suggesting they wanted a ransom. But she shook her head. That was not their goal at all. Tears of pure horror streamed down her face as she remembered the ordeal. They needed people. The bandits claimed they were cultivating some kind of pearls. Strange, incomprehensible runes began appearing all over their bodies. Then they literally carved the grown materials right out of their skin. Nobody survived. The monsters would then squeeze the blood from these parts. They used that blood in a dark ritual to create a crimson sphere. They called this mysterious object a pearl, though its true purpose remained a dark secret. Honestly, even the executioners had no idea why they were harvesting these strange growths from their victims, though one claimed it was the pearl of immortality. Luckily, Lin Gaiyang actually understood the dark truth and began to explain the horrifying process. First, the victims are fed a broth made of mountain monster flesh. Soon after, their bellies swell up with massive, growing lumps. Within 3 months, those grotesque lumps develop into what they call womb pearls. Only then can the true pearl of immortality be harvested. But the timing has to be perfect, exactly 3 months or else. If these womb pearls are not cut out in time, they will hatch. Lin Zai listened in absolute horror, his jaw dropping at the gruesome tale. This was no myth, it was real. Lin Gaiyang grimly looked at him. He warned Lin Zai that some dark secrets are better left buried and forgotten. Meanwhile, one of the resident priests heads to town to alert the local guard. Back at the temple, the other monks prepare food and tea for their guests. The young novice monk, Qingming, is told by his master to deliver a meal. He knocks gently and peeks inside, but the poor woman is nowhere in sight. Thinking she must be sleeping off her traumatic night, Qingming steps inside. But as he crosses the threshold, he feels something wet beneath his feet. He looks down to find himself standing in a thick, dark red puddle. Following the crimson trail with his eyes, the young monk freezes in terror. There is blood everywhere, and standing in the center are someone's feet. He realizes with a shudder that it is the woman they just saved. But then he glances toward the bed and spots a second figure lying there. Confused, the boy slowly edges closer to peer at the sleeping person. To his absolute horror, the woman is lying completely lifeless on the mattress. Pale and cold, she is dead. Terror strikes, making him slip in the blood. He crashes to the floor, screaming out. Then, something warm drips onto his head. Shivering, he slowly looks up, praying with all his might that it is nothing. But get this, clinging to the ceiling is a hideous, writhing nightmare. The monstrous creature had hatched right out of her body. Meanwhile, a weary group of men travels through the dense forest, scouting the perimeter. One of them thanks Mr. Liu for stepping up so they did not bother the Grandmaster. Lu Xiao replies that there is no need, as it is his duty. Every cultivator must protect the innocent. Besides, Xiang had personally ordered him to handle Fahua Temple, assist Lord Xiao, and retrieve a certain crucial item. Lu Xiao does not quite grasp what exactly the Lord's assistant wanted. But Xiang was confident that the young cultivator would figure it out. Just then, the monk leading the soldiers announces that they have arrived. Standing right before them is a massive and truly elegant ancient sanctuary. The temple sits nestled deep in the mountains, surrounded by thick forest. But when they push the main gates open, absolute terror freezes them solid. What kind of monster could have committed such an unspeakable, bloody atrocity? The temple's entire front courtyard is completely littered with the bodies of dead monks. They lie scattered everywhere, some pale and whole, others brutally torn to pieces. Shattered, the young monk immediately panicked about his master, whom he had to rescue, and bolted deep into the temple. While he ran, Wang Bo suggested they search the area to figure out what went down. Scanning the mangled remains of the monks, it looked like they had been devoured by some kind of giant insect. Not one intact body remained. The entire courtyard, Lu Xiao already figured out what Zhang wanted him to hush up this gruesome nightmare. The young man understood he had to handle all the dirty and dangerous work, having absolutely no choice. Meanwhile, guards noticed heavy drag marks leading in a specific direction. They followed the bloody path, realizing it went straight to the temple hall where the monk fled. They stepped inside with weary, tense faces, completely unprepared for the true horror. Waiting within, Wang Bo thought they were looking at sheer, incomprehensible madness. But Lu Xiao realized this was exactly what he needed too. Deliver back to the Jiao state. Right there in the center sat a massive egg. Dripping with blood, surrounded by dozens of mangled corpses, it was simply impossible. To count how many bodies lay there, the young monk stood completely speechless, only muttering prayers under his breath, desperately hoping for a logical explanation. Suddenly, the heavy doors slammed shut, trapping everyone inside the dark temple. Wang Bo immediately demanded they pry it open, but that was the least of their issues. Lu Xiao warned that the egg was about to hatch, bringing true disaster. He clearly knew his stuff. This terrifying object in front of them was a mountain monster egg, bred by the deadly cultivators of the Spirit Mother. Wang Bo had only heard legends about this ancient, sinister Spirit Mother cult from the last dynasty, but he never dreamed it was actually real. Once the creature hatches, it consumes blood and flesh to reach its second stage. This egg was fully matured now, ready to split open at any second. This newborn beast would possess the terrifying strength of a steed-level warrior. It was bound to be an absolute powerhouse. Suddenly, the bloody shell cracked open, and a long, gore-covered arm stretched out. Seconds later, the second-stage mountain monster emerged. It looked utterly grotesque. Hoping for survival at this point was completely foolish. The terrified young monk just kept reciting prayers while the beast locked eyes on its first target, creeping closer on its unnaturally long limbs. Then in a split second, the predator lunged right at the monk, sinking its jagged jaws deep into his flesh. It was absolutely starving after just hatching. A guard rushed forward to save him, but it was completely futile. Absolutely nothing could save the poor kid now, having just secured a fresh snack. The beast surged with brand new power. With a lazy flick of its claw, it swatted the helpless guard across the entire hall, instantly crushing the life right out of him. Wang Bo tried screaming for backup, but it was totally pointless. Nobody could rescue them here. Lu Xiao realized they had not even reached the fourth barrier yet, and before him stood a beast matching a Skunnon-level fighter. He knew they had to escape, quickly calculating if he possessed enough power to shatter the heavy door. Lu Xiao worried about what would happen if that vile mountain monster broke out. Nobody living nearby would ever be safe again. A wave of heavy thoughts washed over him. First and foremost, he only cared about survival and had no intention of sacrificing his own life. Lu Xiao always put himself first. He turned a blind eye to trouble, pretending he never even noticed it. Back then, he and his father expected to live a quiet, peaceful life. But of course, that was just the naive mindset of a weak man. Meanwhile, a battered Wang Bo wheezed, begging Master Lu to save him. Lu Xiao drew his sword, stepping in to protect the helpless, battered man. The mountain monster leaped back, coiled to strike. Lu Xiao stood firm. He felt entirely calm, knowing he would finally discover the true strength of the monster Skakong. Suddenly, a young Lu Xiao swung his wooden sword, shouting that one day he would grow as great as Master Yang. He admired the confident swagger of his older brother, who boasted about going to the city today. Young Lu Xiao told his friend about their future. They would soon work at the Grand Xiao estate, a golden opportunity. His young companion admired him deeply, completely sure he would succeed. But as we quickly find out, life is never that simple. Lord Xiao's son regularly mocked the boy, sneering that he would never join their clan. It was all because Lu Xiao grew up motherless, cast aside, left to cower in the corners of a broken shack with his poor father. In the evenings, his father gently tended to his son's fresh wounds from those constant fights with the landlord's spoiled heir, softly scolding the stubborn boy. He urged him to carry himself with dignity and respect. But most importantly, as his father said, he must grow up too. Become a man he could truly respect, a person of real honor. Remembering this, Lu Xiao recalled his sacred oath to uphold their clans. Strict discipline, he had sworn never to abuse his power against the weak nor to ever use his standing for greedy, selfish gain. The boy also swore to honor his mentors and classmates. With those memories driving him, he charged at the mountain monster. He remembered his duty to stand guard over justice and fight for what is right. A true disciple of Master Yang's lineage would never succumb to evil. While Lu Xiao fought with everything he had, a candle in the temple fell onto a book, sparking a sudden fire. Grandmaster Yang had been an unwavering and fierce warrior, carrying a sharp blade that threatened death to his enemies from childhood. Young Lu Xiao had believed in those legendary words. The duel with the mountain monster continued. Lu Xiao held his own, though the beast possessed terrifying power. His own blade was ready to strike. Gleam and cut, his swift movements sliced through the heavy darkness. Cutting right through the beast's dark terror, Lu Xiao was still fighting. Though his stamina was rapidly fading, he absolutely refused to yield. Since childhood, he remembered his master's tales about a great warrior who fought against massive hordes of monsters in the sands and howling winds. Lu Xiao plunged his sword deep into the mountain monster's body, but by this point the entire temple was already engulfed in roaring flames. He begged his master for forgiveness, unable to accompany him any further. The beast was wounded but not dead. He couldn't let it escape. Luckily, it was still weaker than a warhorse rank warrior. Engulfed in raging flames and dying, Wang Bo praised Master Lu Xiao. A true hero, those words sliced deep into the heart of the young boy. To him, others were far more worthy, like Lai Zai. He remembered his childhood, back when the cruel son of his master had demanded he knock out the teeth of helpless kids, and he did. If he hesitated, Xiao Yuan threatened to knock out Xiao's own teeth. He obeyed. Every single vile order was carried out without a single question. Deep down, he begged his victims for forgiveness to justify his thirst for power. The fire was finally put out. Soon, the soldiers and police arrived. They began clearing away the charred ruins of the old Fawa temple. Suddenly, a shout. A soldier found something in the ashes. And trust me, what they saw inside was a complete and horrific tragedy. The fire spared no one, but one brave soul had clearly sacrificed everything. Two charred skeletons lay right next to each other in the ash. A soldier noticed a small, metallic object that looked like an amulet. He handed the object to the two silent, deeply traumatized children. The boy's face looked terrible, bruised, swollen, and missing teeth. Yet he smiled. A real hero never hurts the weak, he said. Later that night, a furious scream echoed through the quiet Xiao estate. The master simply could not tolerate the weakness and uselessness of his subordinates. His assistant did not understand the true scale of the Lord's wrath. If the incident at Fawa Temple became public, they were ruined. Zhang knelt before his master, explaining they had absolutely no other choice. On the day the woman escaped, the guards immediately gave chase. But no one expected her to make it to the temple. By the time they arrived, the place was already drenched in blood. With no choice, they sent Lu Xiao with strict, bloody orders. As soon as they entered the temple, the trap was sprung. The Xiao family men locked the heavy doors from the outside. Then they set a raging fire to destroy all existing evidence. Honestly, watching him lose his mind is wild, Lord Xiao sneered in disgust. 3 days, that is how long it would take to burn everything. A cold voice suddenly cut in, telling them to shut up. Every single one of them was to blame for this disaster. They failed to track the woman first, and now they must face the music. None of them had been honest, now they must pay. They had not been honest with the Great Mother, and punishment is coming. The man slowly placed his hand, with its long, sharp claws on his head. The assistant was terrified as the sharp claws scraped down his frightened face. He declared that the Great Mother is always stern and absolutely merciless. His pale face was suddenly covered in blood from a quick movement of his hand. With a casual swipe, he knocked one of the servants to the hard ground. He crushed the skull of the man instantly, ending his life on the spot. The leader turned to Lord Zio, praising his massive contribution to the sect. He promised that the Great Mother would forgive him, but they must never forget. They are all in the exact same boat and must support each other. Lord Zio quickly promised the master he would handle everything, personally. He would set things right and prevent any future issues. After that, the leader shifted his cold gaze to Jen's servant, asking if the father truly wished to abandon his son. Jung knelt, bowing deeply. He swore it would never happen again. The leader glanced at his aides. Declaring that he would still rely on them, he laughed loudly and marched out. With the master gone, Lord Zio and his aides finally let out a sigh. They had escaped by pure luck. This time they survived, but barely. Of course, the dead servant's body was a clear sign of the leader's silent threat. But on the other hand, what could they have done in this situation? If not for their clan's vast wealth and power, Lord Zio wouldn't care. He wouldn't have listened to that old tyrant. Luckily, they managed to get away. They gave that woman a perfect chance to eliminate any unwanted witnesses. Another chance like that wouldn't come for a long time, but in the end, everything went almost exactly as planned. For now, they had to hide. They needed to hide. The local authorities had already started a major investigation. As soon as things calmed down, they would head straight to HJO. Lord Zio owned plenty of land there, where they could easily live. Young Master Zio would study, and their happy, peaceful days would finally return. The head of the Yang clan wouldn't meddle in their affairs, but first, to keep all eyes off them, they had to bury the temple mess quickly. But here is the thing. While they planned, young Lanzai was already moving. He went to the market early, but his mind remained entirely consumed by what happened back at the temple. He never expected Lu Zio to die so suddenly. Labo mentioned that this young man was the only one standing up for newcomers. He seemed truly noble, yet his presence at Fawa Temple made no sense. No one knew what he was actually doing at Fawa Temple, elder brother Lu said. The Yang clan received absolutely no official calls for help that day. Still, having a ravenous mountain beast lurking so close to town was extremely dangerous. Luckily, the beast was dead. Linzai was quietly walking through the city when a familiar voice suddenly called out his name. One local villager was incredibly thrilled that young Linzai had safely returned to the city. The boy was confused, but the man urged him to go home. He needed to see for himself. A large crowd had already gathered. As Linzai neared his house, he froze at the sight of a massive, hideous centipede. A warm rock soaking in the sun. Suddenly, a monster's hand struck. This beast, obsessed with attaining eternal life, crushed the insect. It was a mountain monster devouring the creature, chanting Linzai's name. They say that the past of truly great figures is always paved with heavy suffering. The more they endure, the more magnificent they become. In his house, things constantly broke, rotted, and decayed. Ruin was constant, and this happened daily. Chung-chan watched, seeing that the young boy was suffering in silence. Pure agony, his son Dingyi sobbed and begged his father to stop as he lay pinned to a wooden bench, crying out that some lowly fisherman was not worth all this. Just not worth it, but his father simply struck him with a heavy stick, hitting him hard in the groin. The man wondered how he fathered such a fool. The boy shrieked, terrified that his own father would actually kill him here. Right here, while the man roared that he would gladly beat this idiot to death. Nearby, two figures peered through a wall crack, watching the brutal family discipline unfold. One of them muttered that they all hoped a martial sect would change the boy. Instead, she always knew the young troublemaker would just end up in deep misery. This gossiping woman was Linzai's aunt, though she had never shared a single mouthful of rice with him. Now she had no clue what he wanted from them. Lin Gong Tian scoffed, calling her utterly blind to the reality of things. Did she honestly expect a kid like Lin Zai to ever repay their kindness? She had clearly forgotten how foolish the boy's father used to be. Suddenly, the man hushed her. Their nephew was walking up right now, but Linzai looked utterly confused, turning to the crowd to ask what they were all doing. Outside his home, beyond the father beating his son in the dusty yard, several other curious villagers had gathered, murmuring and waiting to see what would happen next. Suddenly, He Chang dropped his wooden stick and eagerly rushed forward to greet his favorite nephew, exclaiming that Linzai stood tall like a proud young pine. Weathering a fierce storm, it was no wonder a great master took him in. At those words, an excited murmur swept through the watching crowd of villagers. Spread among the gossips, you could practically hear their greedy minds starting to work. Could the legendary hero, Yang Dongxiang, really be mentoring their young neighbor? Everyone knew that being a personal disciple meant you were practically an adopted son. Even the powerful prefectural authorities would now have to respect young Linzai. Talk about an upgrade, greedy calculations immediately flashed through their minds. They desperately wondered how they could exploit this newly powerful neighbor. Immediately, the crowd showered the young man with fake congratulations and praise. They claimed they always knew he would succeed, offering him free meals and flattery. To gain his favor, then, He Chang spoke up with a submissive bow. He admitted his useless son had done something truly shameless and unforgivable. Now Linzai could beat the boy himself, and nobody would stop him. It was a ridiculous show of submission, giving Linzai total control. He could easily take revenge and do whatever he pleased to Dingye. Linzai stared down at the trembling boy bound to the wooden frame. He noted that while he rarely held grudges, bottling up anger is unhealthy. Repressing those feelings ruins your peace of mind, and everyone deserves harmony. Slowly, Linzai reached down. He picked up the heavy wooden stick. He stepped closer, looming over the terrified Dingyi with a cold look. Unable to take the pressure, Dingyi broke down. He wept. He begged for mercy, offering to become Linzai's slave forever. He swore he would never do it again. Linzai simply nodded. Tossing the stick aside, he decided the boy had suffered enough humiliation. Besides, he was not the mastermind behind this mess, turning away Linzai. He was just turning around to head home when He Chang suddenly called out to him. He praised the young man for showing such incredible generosity. And taking pity on his son, utterly refusing to be ungrateful, servants held a tray piled high with silver ingots, 200 of them. No one there had ever seen so much wealth in one single place. Everyone stood there completely shocked, mouths agape in sheer astonishment. Suddenly, a door swung wide open, and another relative appeared in the doorway, suddenly remembering he also had a young nephew. Named Linzai, he boldly declared that he was the boy's real uncle, his own true flesh and blood, fully ready to negotiate the compensation directly with the master. But the villagers yelled, "Have a conscience, Gong Tian." After all, when young Linzai was literally starving to death, he wouldn't even open his door. Talk about shameless. Now that silver is involved, he suddenly remembers his beloved blood relative, but the greedy man fought back, arguing loudly that it was absolutely none of their business, and that Linzai would not even be alive today without Gong Tian. He Chang turned to the young man and quietly asked who this obnoxious intruder even was. Linzai didn't recognize him at all in the original owner's memories. This so-called uncle had never shown him even a tiny shred of actual kindness. He was just a parasite. When Linzai was starving, the man gave nothing. Not a single grain of rice. Linzai told He Chang that if he wished to repay him, there was an upcoming village festival in honor of the river god. Every single resident has to donate at least 100 fen, since He Chang is so kind. Why not cover these expenses so the villagers can save money for the harsh winter ahead? Besides, a field kitchen could easily be set up for a few days, since so many starving vagrants have been hanging around lately. The villagers cheered loudly at this suggestion. What a truly brilliant, selfless idea. They immediately saw Linzai as a wonderful boy, warmly inviting him over. Linzai was finally able to escape the crowd, with the matter now fully settled. It seemed there were no more questions for him. The young man stretched his arms, thinking that during his last skin barrier training, it hadn't felt as dense as usual, feeling slightly inflamed instead. However, Linzai knew this was actually an incredibly good sign. Perhaps today he would finally break through his first skin barrier. He filled a basin with water, knowing that the physical breakthrough process would cause intense overheating. Honestly, one tiny mistake here, and his brain could easily burn out. To avoid this, he must keep cool. Linzai quickly undressed and submerged himself in the water, beginning the process of breaking through his barrier. He sat completely still, concentrating and shutting off his consciousness. Soon, he felt immense energy surging through his entire body, as if his skin were a porous sponge. Linzai realized he had succeeded. Now he could practice controlling the flow. At this point, he could easily control 250 liters of water, which was a massive improvement. Yet he noticed that the system percentage had barely increased. Linzai dressed still. Pondering these changes, he now had 3 under his control. This was an excellent result from breaking through the skin barrier. If he could master the rest, he would soon control entire tons of water. His abilities perfectly complemented each. With everything now perfectly in place, Linzai decided it was time. He opened the door, only to find himself face to face with his uncle. Lin Gongtine had suddenly remembered his nephew and decided to drop by. The greedy old man was actually peeking straight through the keyhole. Boom, the door swung wide open, slamming straight into the old man's nose. Linzai did not want to waste his breath, so he demanded answers. Asking what he wanted, Gongtine just clutched a tiny sack of rice. He claimed he was deeply worried about Linzai starving and losing sleep. Linzai did not buy it, instantly slamming the door right in his face. Telling his uncle to keep the food, Linzai was done going hungry. Gongtine kept shoving against the wood. He was not giving up easily. He wanted a piece of his nephew, who was now a local celebrity. Linzai ripped the door open. His uncle went flying backward. Falling to the ground, the old man was absolutely furious at this disrespect. How could Linzai do this to his own uncle, his only blood relative? This house should rightfully belong to him, not the ungrateful boy. He yelled that Linzai was a fool for refusing all that silver. The idiot could have taken every coin and handed it directly to his family. Or at the very least, he could have helped his cousin Zio Leo. He should stop being so selfish and show some respect to his elders. Listening to this endless garbage, Linzai could feel his patience wearing thin. He looked at the greedy parasite. Did he want to die? Gongtine stared back, completely frozen by the terrifying look in his eyes. The kid had changed in one heartbeat, and honestly, his presence was terrifying. Throwing a tantrum, Gongtine rolled around on the ground, wailing for attention. He screamed about this ungrateful brat who abandoned his own blood. How could Linzai ignore his own flesh and blood after climbing so high? Before he could finish, a thick glob of spit landed right on his face. It stunned him completely. A furious neighbor stepped out from the crowd. She loudly asked who had actually paid for Linzai's father's coffin. Did Gongtine ever share even a scrap of food with his dying brother? Everyone knew that his greed had left the boy's father completely broke. With only one broken boat, the father worked day and night to raise his son. Gongtine scrambled to his feet, absolutely refusing to listen to this truth. He screamed that these gossiping old women had no right to talk. They needed to shut their filthy mouths, but a heavy blow landed. A thick wooden staff slammed into his chest, knocking him flat on his back. The village elder stood over him, warning the trash to watch his tongue. Now that Linzai was successful, this leech wanted the rewards. Where was he when the boy was starving? The crowd was done listening. Together they chased the shameless scoundrel away, telling him to get lost. The old leech was warned never to set foot here again. The elder Chen Xiong was a powerful figure and head of the main family. Even the wealthy Lord Zio had to show this old man proper respect. Lin Zai bowed in gratitude, politely asking what brought the elder to his home. Old Chen came by to invite Lin Zai to serve as a priest at the upcoming river festival. The village would host it soon. This was his perfect chance. From this position, he could easily observe everything happening during the event. It was an incredible opportunity, and he also hoped to uncover a few mysteries. Specifically, he wanted to decode that weird profile stat called the favor of the river. So Lin Zai gratefully accepted the elder's invitation to become a priest. But the old man warned him to study the ritual texts thoroughly right away. The festival was fast approaching. Soon enough, the next morning arrived. The sun was shining, flowers bloomed, birds sang a cheerful tune. Lin Zai walked to school carrying his bag, though things were far from simple. He had stayed up all night, desperately trying to memorize those ancient ritual texts. It was brutally difficult, since he barely knew any of the local characters. That basic literacy issue was a massive roadblock while trying to memorize the scripts. Still, he had no other choice. Lin Zai resolved to push through the struggle. He would master this ancient world, a pretty rare path for any modern person. Before long, morning classes began at the village schoolhouse. The master lectured about how hard work brings comfort, honor, and wealth. He also warned them to never associate with criminals who are unworthy by nature. Lin Zai understood the necessity of education, but this was getting ridiculous. He never actually imagined he would end up stuck in elementary school. Now a fully grown man had to sit among tiny little kids. Talk about a pretty awkward situation, as the embarrassment was incredibly stressful. So this was his second chance. Suddenly, a chubby girl at the next desk spoke up. She snitched to the teacher that Lin Zai was not repeating any of the rules. The master flared up instantly, slamming his cane down onto the table. He barked at Lin Zai to stop acting so incredibly self-important. An uneducated adult should be deeply grateful just to be allowed in this classroom. He should be thrilled the master was willing to teach him at all. Lin Zai simply smiled and began reciting the entire text word for word. Follow the law, respect authority, act wisely, and diligence will bring you honor. Never run with criminals, for they are entirely unworthy by their very nature. Study is difficult, but diligence is key to truly understanding our complex world. Lin Zai spoke on and on, leaving his young classmates utterly speechless. They stared in disbelief, and even the furious master could not find any fault. This unique classmate had actually memorized every single character on the spot. After all, in his past life, he graduated from a top university. Deciding not to play modest, Lin Zai told the master his teaching was ineffective. Oh, you just know the master completely lost his mind at that. This specific teaching method had been passed down carefully through generations of sages. What did some random, uneducated kid think he knew about teaching? The teacher calmed down slightly, asking what better suggestions he could offer. Lin Zai smiled, realizing his absolute moment of glory had finally arrived. He explained that while their semantic method possessed some real merits, it was way too complex and forced students to memorize each character individually. Instead, Lin Zai proposed a system where a character was broken down. Divided into symbols representing specific sounds, the young man explained that this method is called the pinyin system. It sounds much simpler than the traditional semantic method, so perhaps there is a reason to try it here. Zai Hengyue agreed that there was a logical component to this method and asked Lin Zai to explain everything in more detail. Some children had already recognized Mr. Zai, who had arrived from the capital to join their class. It was a tremendous honor for all the students, teachers, and the entire school. Lin Zai spoke about his teaching vision, and Mr. Zai found it interesting, but then a local school teacher called it absolute nonsense, saying he did not want such heresy reaching his ears. Mr. Zai replied that in Dashan it was customary to reward scholars. If someone invented something useful, they could receive gold, tax exemption, or even a noble title. Lane Zai understood. What this meant, trust me, staying under the radar is his only option now. To avoid suspicion, he had to take control of his reputation. Zai Hengyue announced that the young man was incredibly talented, offering Lin Zai the chance to study. Under him, a massive honor. Mr. Zai believed that education should never be bound by social status, a lesson from his own teacher, Old Master. Jen thought this was outrageous, fearing high-ranking officials might take offense at the setup. Mr. Zai just laughed, telling the teacher to not worry about a thing. If there was ever a question Mr. Zai's student could not ask, the master himself would ask, and if there was anything the student could not handle, Mr. Zai would resolve it himself. Lin Zai was in absolute shock, realizing the massive changes taking place in his life. He bowed, thanking Zai Hengyue for everything. Meanwhile, the pets grew quite sad because their owner was constantly busy at school, forced to play with each other. They tossed a ball of yarn back and forth to distract themselves from their loneliness. It was actually during this game that the pets stumbled upon an abandoned, mysterious spot deep at the bottom of the lake. And get this, a strange, glowing light was softly emanating from those dark depths. The pets decided to call their owner, and late that night he snuck out to explore this fascinating place with them. Tahua was incredibly pleased, constantly boasting that he was the one who first found it, and that they owed him. Plus, they needed to thank their pet crab, Clash, who had dug out a nice, big passage. Lin Zai was happy to have them. They helped him and kept each other from getting bored. Lin Zai made his way through the passage, realizing the cave was much larger than he had ever expected. The glowing light that attracted his pets came from a massive vine growing upward with a soft texture, so Lin Zai decided to give it a bite. It might have been a demonic plant because he could not bite through it, so, along with his pets, the boy climbed upward along the cliff, holding tightly to the vine. Soon they entered a chamber filled with fresh air and an underwater lake. Finally, Lin Zai managed to step onto dry land and located the vine's origin. Suddenly, he noticed some slight movement behind him, like a tiny insect rustling. Thanks to his incredible physical conditioning, Lin Zai reacted instantly, and a massive water centipede shoots right past his ear. Lin Zai just smiles. He mocks the creature for being too slow. He saw it coming ages ago. This giant, writhing monster is no ordinary bug. It is a mystical beast. It lunges to tear the boy apart, but Clash is finally big enough to fight. The crab casually pins the beast with a heavy claw. The centipede flinches back. Lin Zai stares in awe. His little crab has grown into a true warrior. Within minutes, the duel is over. Clash stands victorious, clamping the centipede tight. The monster thrashes wildly in his grip. Lin Zai respects those crushing, venomous jaws. He looks down at the struggling beast, his mind spinning with a new plan. Beyond those lethal fangs lies something far worse, the deadly venom dripping from its mouth. If he can somehow tame this nightmare, it would make the perfect hidden weapon. Lin Zai gauges his mental strength. His psychic reserve should just barely cut it. He grabs a jagged rock to draw blood and seal the contract. But his recent breakthrough has made his physical body way too durable for simple stones. The rock literally shatters against his skin without leaving a single scratch. He makes a mental note to buy a proper dagger from blacksmith Lugong later. He finally forces a deep cut on his finger, squeezing out enough blood. Pressing his bleeding hand forward, he targets the beast pinned under Clash's grip. The contract seal ignites in a flash of crimson, forcing the creature to writhe. A brutal psychic backlash hits him hard. Lin Zai nearly collapses. Absolute agony, relentless pain now racks his entire physical body. But his sheer willpower wins, and the branding process finally settles. Lin Zai exhales a heavy breath, relieved to have secured his newest companion. Since this thing is incredibly fierce, he decides to name it Fei, but wait, there's a catch. To evolve Fei, he'll need a ridiculous amount of rare water essence. These summons are getting incredibly expensive. According to its status window, Fei eats mushrooms. Lanezai commands the centipede to lead him straight to its feeding grounds. Fei quickly slithers toward a pitch-black cave hidden deep in the grotto. Crouching near the dark opening, Lanezai tries to peer into the shadows. The atmosphere is heavy and unnerving. Inside, a human skeleton sits in the dark. The ancient remains wear shredded robes, holding a sealed wooden box tightly. A faint message is carved into the cold stone floor right before him. The writer was once a high general of the legendary Zhan dynasty. Severely wounded and defeated in battle, he chose to drown himself in this cave. Too ashamed to face his emperor, he welcomed death in the dark. Lanezai slowly processes the words, the fallen dynasty, the water, and the tragedy. The rest of the message is a complete blur to him. Since he never finished school, these complex ancient characters are absolute gibberish. It is clear the general died here, but are there more graves nearby? If so, there could be some legendary treasures waiting to be unearthed. Lanezai eyes the chest, hoping for those rare spiritual mushrooms. Offering a quick apology to the corpse, he gently pries the chest loose. Inside lies a pristine spiritual mushroom, alongside the chewed remains of another. Looks like Fei already had a snack. Lanezai promises the skeleton a proper burial. He will bury him by the lotus field. Now, it is time to power up. Lanezai hoped these spiritual mushrooms would push his fusion past 50%. He decided to share the treasure with all his beasts, piece by piece. The crocodile got a prime cut, while the catfish and crab got smaller portions. His centipede was already completely stuffed from eating a whole mushroom by herself. So the rest of the spiritual mushroom was strictly reserved for Lanezai. Taking a bite, he found the energy surprisingly gentle, sliding down like soft tofu. It felt incredibly refreshing, bringing in even more water essence than crab roe. Without hesitation, the young man dumped all these newly acquired points into his leveling. And the payoff was massive. His synchronization with the ferocious monkey reached 50%. He felt his raw physical strength surging to an entirely new level. Best of all, a brand new skill called Aqua Dash unlocked in his system. The raw energy in his chest blazed brighter, prompting him to thank the skeleton. Now it was time to test exactly what his new powers could actually do. He activated Aqua Dash, and a sudden torrent of water blasted him forward like a rocket. Lanezai completely misjudged the sheer power of this sudden, insane speed boost. Before he could even react, he went flying straight toward a solid stone wall. It was a stellar mobility option, though the energy drain was pretty heavy. On top of that, steering the damn thing was almost impossible at high speeds. Shaking it off, he pulled up his status profile and noticed a major change. Thanks to the river's favor, his total water control capacity had expanded significantly. His loyal beasts had also made some serious leveling progress right alongside him. The crocodile was already very close to evolving into a horned crocodile. Meanwhile, Chonky's catfish had almost transformed into a powerful tiger catfish variant. It grew quite muscular and whiskered, though the crab still had ways to go. Still, the crab's power was undeniable. Lanezai had one lingering question. It made no sense. How did Chonky outpace all the other beasts? Perhaps it simply came down to the weird digestion of a giant catfish. With the big festival only a week away, he dedicated his time to training. He felt a storm brewing, and trust me, things were about to get wild. 7 days flew by, bringing the chill of early winter to the village. The locals prepared for the celebration as Lobo knocked loudly on his friend's door. He shouted that it was time to leave, and Lanezai quickly finished getting ready. Dressing in his finest festival attire, he extended an arm toward his pet centipede. A fez slid right up his sleeve, wrapping her long body around his wrist. She looked exactly like an exotic, custom bracelet, blending in perfectly. Stepping outside, he flashed a grin and told his buddy he was good to go. Down in the bustling town square, a massive main stage had already been built. Vibrant market stalls lined the pathways as happy crowds wandered through the streets. But amidst the cheer, little Nur was weeping loudly, leaving her mother totally helpless. The child pointed into the distance, sobbing that a scary monster was lurking there. Of course, absolutely nobody else in the crowd could see a single thing. Still, Nur kept pointing at the empty space, terrified of the invisible threat. Her mother sighed, assuring her that a monster could never enter their peaceful town. The girl kept weeping, forcing her mother to desperately bribe her with candy. If only everyone else had been able to see what she did. Sharp eyes, if anyone had the girl's vision, they would have spotted him. Yes, lurking right behind one of the houses, though it's actually much worse. No human, this was a monster dreaming of obtaining the power of immortality. By exploiting Lin Zai's power, meanwhile the grand festival was in full swing and the villagers brought forward their sacrificial animals. The shaman was ready to begin. He signaled the high priest, who was about to kick off the ceremonial part. Pure silence, serving as the high priest today, Lin Zai slowly stepped forward. He climbed the stone steps to the altar where the offerings were prepared. Everything was set for the ritual, from the animal heads to the sacred items. As the shaman declared the ceremony open, Lin Zai unrolled the sacred scroll. He began to read aloud, "O river god, by your mercy, I claim the lands of Yanshin." Situated right by the Huhe River, offering these grand gifts in return. Gathered by your loyal people, down in the crowd, Li Libo and Jai Cheng watched closely. They looked up at their friend with pure pride, amazed by how far he had come. Li Libo was stunned. His childhood friend had changed so much over the years. It was hard to notice since they had grown up together, side by side. But seeing him now, so strong, brave, and absolutely full of confidence, Li Libo wondered if this dignified figure was still the same Lin Zai. Meanwhile, a shadow moved. A hideous beast was climbing the walls. It crept onto the rooftop, locking its hungry eyes directly on the high priest. This was the deadly mountain monster that Brother Lu had warned them about. Unreal speed, its scales matched the records perfectly. It looked just like the illustrations from the textbooks. Meanwhile, little Near quieted down. After her mother bought her some sweet candy, standing quietly in the bustling crowd. But as she looked around, she suddenly started screaming and pointing again. She shrieked that the beast had returned, and this time, others looked up. High on a nearby rooftop sat the terrifying mountain monster, clear as day. Nobody had ever faced anything like this, and panic immediately set in. Knowing its cover was blown, the beast leaped straight down into the crowd. Chaos erupted, terrified villagers scattered in every single direction. In the mad rush, little Near got separated and stood there crying, completely lost. Her mother was helplessly swept away by the wave of fleeing people. Standing on the altar, Lin Zai saw the beast closing in on the child. He knew he wouldn't be able to reach her in time to stop it. The situation was absolutely critical, but then Li Libo spotted her from afar. He immediately bolted forward into the fray, desperate to save the helpless little girl. Fortunately, Jai Cheng was closer. He scooped up the girl just in time. He rolled out of the way as the monster's claws narrowly missed them. Jai Cheng shouted to Li Libo, telling him to draw the beast's attention away. Li Libo hesitated. He had only just learned his new battle technique. He lacked confidence, but with no other choice, Li Libo drew his dagger. He hurled the blade with all his might directly at the mountain monster. But the agile beast easily dodged the flying weapon, leaving Li Libo empty-handed. He had no time to throw another, and the monster was closing in. It lunged forward, opening its massive jaws to devour the helpless child. Wide open, ready to devour her, Jai Cheng shut his eyes and shouted too. Lin Zai, if he has any tricks left, now is the time to show. The mountain monster's giant, hideous claw almost touches her head before a sudden stream of water strikes it right in the middle. Lin Zai uses Aqua Dash to quickly close the gap between them. This time, his speed is absolutely perfect. The young warrior slams the mountain monster, pinning its massive body hard against the ground. When the beast first crashed the festival, Lin Zai knew he couldn't stop it physically. But then his eyes caught a jar filled with ritual river water. Gathered for the ritual, since Aqua Dash needs water to activate, the young man realized he had to set up the spell completely by himself. Placing his hand on the liquid, he commands it to rise up in response to his hands. Then, Lin Zai triggers Aqua Dash, feeling a massive surge of high water pressure violently propel him toward the mountain monster. That explosive burst of speed is more than enough to smash the creature into the dirt with incredible, brutal power. His timing was flawless, and Jai Chang caught every single detail of the spectacular counterattack. The boy, honestly, who wouldn't want to understand how his friend pulled off such an amazing move? But Lin Zai just tells him to take the girl and run away immediately. Leave the beast to him and they can talk later. Jai Chang does not hesitate at all. He scoops up the girl, shouting back that as soon as she is safe, he will return to help fight. Meanwhile, Lin Zai stares hard through the thick, rising clouds of dust and smoke, wondering where this horrible beast even came from. Once the air finally clears, he sees that the creature is gone. Only deep spiderweb cracks remain on the dry ground where it was just pinned down. But the beast is not done yet. It lunges out of nowhere, rising up to resume its relentless assault. Lin Zai barely manages to block the incoming heavy strikes. Quickly realizing this opponent possesses unbelievable raw strength, a fierce clash erupts between them, and seeing a split-second opening, Lin Zai strikes with all his remaining power. Just then, Leibo and Jai Chang rush back into the main square to back up their friend in his desperate struggle against the beast. Lin Zai shouts to them that they absolutely must pin the creature down first before attacking. He quickly tries to find a tactical way, shouting to his allies not to swing blindly, but to target its weak joints instead. The boys execute the plan instantly. Slipping silently behind the giant monster, they drive their sharp hunting blades deep into its hips. A deafening scream pierces the air as the beast writhes in agony. Lin Zai stares at this terrifying enemy that came incredibly close to ending his life. Realizing that simple desire is never enough, he lands heavy strikes, sending the beast stumbling back, and immediately commands his venomous centipede summon to strike. The toxic insect springs forward, latching onto the mountain monster's back, and readies its razor-sharp pincers. Lin Zai is absolutely confident that the creature's potent poison will cripple their opponent. Meanwhile, horrified villagers watch from a safe distance. They have never witnessed such an incredibly destructive and nightmarish monster clash in their lives, let alone inside their own peaceful town square. Suddenly, the beast scrambles back up and tries to flee. Terrified bystanders scatter in panic, helpless to stop the rampage, but Lin Zai snatches up a massive timber log, shouting that he is not letting this beast escape today. Liang ripped a massive wooden support pillar right out of the ground and hurled it with absolute force, delivering a bone-shattering strike directly against the monster's exposed back. The massive demon was pinned flat to the dirt, and right after, Liang leaped onto the heavy timber, pinning it down to trap the beast. But then, the dying demon rasped out a chilling warning, calling out Liang's exact name. Silence fell over the crowd. Nobody ever expected a wild mountain demon to speak. Panic erupted instantly. In a single moment, their peaceful village life was completely shattered. Gone, but Liang quickly reassured them, insisting this was no curse or wrath from the river. Instead, he declared it a profound gift, a true blessing meant for the whole village. Yet the beast was still breathing, meaning Liang had to find a quick way to slay it permanently, preventing any chance of rebirth. The young warrior drew his dagger and leaned directly over the pinned demon's massive body. With one swift, incredibly decisive motion, Liang severed the mountain demon's head, declaring it the ultimate sacrifice to the river god. The festival ended, the headless corpse lay rotting right in the center of the plaza. Liang knew that if he had not pierced its thick, defensive hide, breached its defensive skin barrier, digested the supernatural mushroom from the corpse, and accelerated his bloodline fusion rate, this encounter would have ended in tragedy. It was also a brilliant move to utilize the centipede's paralyzing venom, slowing the monster down completely, and secure the win. Thanks to his quick thinking, the beast fell. Liang felt incredible, surging strength coursing through his veins. More than that, he had finally earned the sacred river's favor. Now, with this power, he could level up an entirely new ability. The only real disappointment was the shockingly tiny reward for slaying such a beast. By the next morning, both the village chief and the local doctor had arrived. The village doctor carefully examined Liang, immediately noting the deep wounds left by the savage demon. He could not help but admire his rare martial build, marveling at his long arms. With the reach of a mighty ape, balanced by a remarkably slender wasp waist, focus, doctor. Shifting back to the task, the doctor inquired about Liang's unique clothing. Liang explained that the sturdy outer cloak was a gift from his second brother. Crafted from actual bearskin, it was incredibly tough, shielding him like solid armor, while his inner robe, a grand gift from his eighth brother, was woven entirely from exquisite heavenly silk. Even so, the doctor shook his head, realizing rare garments alone could not explain his survival. He asked Liang directly, "Have you already broken through the legendary skin barrier?" That question froze everyone in their tracks. Mentioning the skin barrier was huge. Liang saw no point in lying, so he simply nodded and confessed. The villagers erupted in sheer excitement, swelling with pride. His close friend Li Libo looked on with deep admiration. In mere months, his friend had become a powerhouse. Chen Jicheng felt a cold wave of dread, realizing he stood absolutely no chance against Liang. Meanwhile, Liang Ganshan was stunned by his nephew's terrifying progress, praying the boy would not seek bloody vengeance. Eager to ease the tension, the chief asked what kind of beast they were dealing with, since everyone was terrified. Addressing the worried crowd, Liang explained that the beast was known as a mountain demon. It was a bloodthirsty creature, lured directly to the village by the scent of a large gathering. He could not guarantee if more of these demons were lurking nearby, though he was certain of one crucial fact: this was absolutely not an isolated incident. Panic immediately rippled through the crowd at the terrifying thought of monsters roaming close by. Right then, a sudden cry. He pointed directly at the head of the monster. Did it look familiar? At first, they only saw a beast, but looking closer, they noticed a shocking resemblance to Ban Xingjiang, who went missing months ago. Underneath the mutation, it really was him. Lane Zai immediately suspected dark alchemy. The Zyro state, mountain demons, Lu Zyro, it all linked back to Fua Temple. Why hadn't he seen these connections before now? Why hadn't he realized where this beast came from, or what was happening inside the Zyro manor, where mountain demons were being bred? Lin Zai looked at the village head, explaining that this grim discovery was extremely serious. He had to report these horrifying events to his teacher, Yang Dong. The locals were right. This monster was indeed Ban Xingjiang. Now, Lin Zai knew the situation was highly dangerous. Every culprit would face heavy punishment. Without wasting a second, the young man rushed straight to the home of Yang Dong. Arriving at the estate, he was stopped by Yang Huzai. She demanded to know his purpose. Bowing politely, Lin Zai greeted the lady and explained he had an urgent matter to discuss with his master. He recounted everything, convinced that the temple incident directly involved the Zyro state. The elegant woman slowly sipped her tea, smiling softly. She praised his sharp mind. That was why Yang Dong had chosen him as his personal disciple. Still, Lin Zai realized she didn't seem surprised at all, prompting him to ask her about her unusually calm reaction. She understood his anxiety, she said, but he shouldn't underestimate his teacher. Yang Dong is, after all, the sole tiger warrior in this entire territory. That legendary power was something to always keep in mind. Meanwhile, high in the misty peak sat the ominous citadel of the Dark Demon Mother sect, a group of travelers. Made their way up the massive stone steps. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed, warning them of an incoming assault. They desperately tried to sound the alarm. Above them, a massive vortex tore through the clouds, unleashing a colossal flaming sword that threatened to obliterate the entire mountain stronghold as the blazing sword descended. It sliced through the atmosphere, paralyzing everyone with pure dread. Finally, Yang Dong emerged amidst the raging flames, demanding their immediate surrender now that he had arrived. Back at the estate, Lin Zai trained relentlessly day and night, his anxiety growing, because he had been confined to his master home for 2 entire days. The lady had kept him locked away to prevent him from interfering with the plans of Yang Dong, even providing him with 2,000 fen to cover his daily living expenses. She treated it casually, telling Lin Zai that he could easily ask her for more. On top of that, she gave him a potent restorative pill, and because of its power, his severe injuries were nearly healed. Yang Dong suspected that the cult of the demon Mother was preparing a massive raid on local cultivators to steal their secret elixirs, which explained why the lady was keeping Lin Zai securely hidden away. Suddenly, Lin Zai spotted a dangerous object hurtling right at his face. Reacting instantly, he raised his guard and deflected it away. The impact left a deep crater in the solid stone wall with a yellow sphere sitting perfectly in the middle. Lin Zai scanned the courtyard, demanding to know who was lurking. In the dark shadows, step by step, the older brother of Hu Kai emerged, praising his incredible reflexes. It turned out that the lethal yellow object was just a mandarin. I heard that Lin Zai was currently back at the clan, so he went looking for him. He headed straight to the training grounds to find his young apprentice. Tossing Lin Zai a spear, I suggested a quick, friendly sparring match. Lin Zai accepted the challenge instantly, promising that he would not hold back. Spear in hand, the young man invited I to strike first. But I played dirty, suddenly hurling a fresh tangerine right at his opponent. Distracted by the fruit, Lin Zai missed his strikes, leaving himself completely exposed. Left wide open, his spear was knocked away, leaving him completely weaponless. Yet he readied his bare fists. That was when I noticed. The young disciple had already broken past the tough skin barrier. Seeing this progress, I knew the boy possessed a destiny pattern. Having never heard of destiny patterns, Lin Zai wanted an explanation. I simply held out his hand, promising that the day of explanations was near. Their master would reveal everything when the time was right. Shaking hands, the two brothers immediately dove back into sparring. Spar after spar followed. They kept pushing on and on. Eventually, Lin Zai collapsed from pure exhaustion, barely able to even sit up. I confirmed that the Zhou estate reports matched his own findings. Still, the whole thing felt far too simple, far too easy. It seemed as though someone had deliberately left a clear trail. Perhaps he was simply overthinking things and jumping to conclusions. He told Lin Zai to ignore it. I turned to leave. But then he paused, mentioning he had a special manual perfect for Lin Zai. Since the boy had already broken through the skin barrier, this book was ideal. It contained the technique of the bow's power, perfect for his current stage. Combat techniques are divided into 2 clear paths: movement and power. Power skills deepen a warrior's control over blood and energy. I left the ancient manual with his junior brother, urging him to study it. He wanted to see those techniques used in their next spar. Lin Zai thanked him, but asked why I had sought him. I had been so deeply lost in thought that he almost forgot his real purpose. Brother Lu Gong had requested for the young man to come see him immediately. Lin Zai smiled, immediately realizing his very first weapon was finally ready. Meanwhile, a massive mountain monster hung bound by heavy iron chains in a vast hall. Miserable prisoners with bound hands were marched slowly past the rows of steel cages. Ruthless guards escorted the miserable souls forward, no escape. Everyone knew they would never leave alive. Then Linu Young noticed. Seeing a girl the same age as his daughter, sinister thoughts filled his mind. A comrade suddenly called out, warning Linu Young not to linger in this place. Lord Wu was waiting. The cloaked men soon stood before him. They reported that all ingredients were ready for the master. They promised that in 3 days, everything would be fully prepared for his use. The master praised his servants, calling the progress absolute perfection. He ordered them to guard the mountain monster with extreme care. Meanwhile, the captives sat huddled together in a dark cell. Old folks and children were mixed together in the crowd, some weeping, others trying to sleep. An elder coughed heavily, then opened his eyes, hoping to see. The young master, every spiritual weapon holds a soul, and inside that soul lies its true nature. Hot-tempered warriors carry highly explosive armaments, while calmer and gentler soul types wield flexible, flowing blades. A master blacksmith must forge a customized weapon, ensuring the warrior remains deeply attuned and linked to its core. This creation starts by tempering the tungsten steel, softening the tungsten steel, purifying its raw essence, and strengthening its toughness. This is all forged through fire. During the second phase, the energy from the crimson feather gets unleashed, allowing the steel to absorb it. Once this merging process wraps up, the skilled craftsman shapes these raw materials into a real weapon. For now, a fleeting shadow hovers between illusion and reality, waiting to feed on fresh blood. This crimson offering will soon define the spear. Every spiritual weapon must be sealed with the blood of its master, so Lenzai immediately sliced his hand to offer a tribute. Lenzai was experiencing this forge for the very first time. He stayed completely focused as the crimson flow dripped onto the steel. Glowing heat swirled wildly around the forge, sealing the sacred bond between weapon and master. Lu Gong had nearly finished the spear when, get this, the weapon rejected Lenzai's blood, but Lu Gong refused to yield, declaring that no task would fail under his watch. He was determined to get this right. Lu Gong pushed his limits even further, and just as dawn broke outside, the master announced that Lenzai's spear was ready. Now the young man could test it. Looking at the flame-shrouded weapon, he realized that this was truly his weapon. Lenzai lifted the spear and was shocked by its massive weight of over 50 kilograms. At first, the young warrior struggled to keep his balance, but his control rapidly improved. With each movement, Lenzai felt a profound connection, sharing one breath. Lu Gong pointed out a training dummy in the yard for testing. He did not need to be told twice to put it to use. Lenzai unleashed his techniques on the target with absolute joy. Falling deeper in love with the spear, Lu Gong watched him closely and praised their perfect synergy, stating that this masterpiece deserved a name. Lenzai pondered for a silent moment before making his decision. He would name the spear Fubo, meaning conqueror of the waves. Suddenly, a voice rang out, noting that Lenzai's spear seemed ready. His older brother and fourth brother stepped inside, observing him from the sidelines. Surprised, the young master immediately questioned what brought them there. It seemed Hu Jai had sent the fourth brother on a scout mission, but he ended up drinking at local taverns instead. Cheeks were covered in kiss marks, not exactly your standard investigative work. Lu Gong demanded to know what Hu Jai discovered. Surprisingly, the slacker was confident he had found the exact location of a demon mother sect stronghold. Hu Jai explained the danger he suffered, yet he couldn't help but enjoy all these beautiful flowers. But at the same time, the young man kept a very close eye on his surroundings. He soon spotted a group of figures clad in black robes moving past. Keeping watch was tough, with all these gorgeous girls constantly trying to ply him with drinks. He drank strictly for business, then slipped away to tail the cloaked targets. He tracked them to their hideout near Fahua Temple. There, Lu Yugong guessed they were following the master's plan, but direct assault was too risky. A direct strike was a bad move. Langong agreed they should wait. They decided to wait and strike the very next day. Then Kai Shai leaned close to the newcomer, stating that Lin Zai would definitely join them. Suddenly turning serious, Kai Shai looked straight at his companion and declared, it was time for Lin Zai's hands to be stained with blood. He couldn't avoid it forever, especially with so many enemies around. Just then, the blacksmith smacked his comrade on the head, warning Lin Zai to ignore that absolute nonsense. Lu Yugong grew serious instead, asking Lin Zai about sneaking into the cult. He asked about infiltrating the Demon Mother sect. Lin Zai did not hesitate at all. He vowed to go with his friends. Meanwhile, the massive mountain demon still hung in chains inside the Demon Mother's dark fortress. Some guards led Master Zhang toward the chained beast, boasting of its incredible strength. It was well-fed and stronger than ever. Impatient, Master Zhang immediately sent the servants away, barking that he would handle this creature himself. Left alone with the beast, Master Zhang stepped closer and whispered softly. He muttered that the poor boy had tried so hard, if only he hadn't become this monster. Things would be so different, yet only his beloved son could grant him the eternal gift of immortality. That night, the quiet hills near Fahua Temple seemed perfectly peaceful, no signs of trouble yet. But soon, another miserable group of captives marched down the path. They were heavily escorted. Scanning the crowd, one of the guards sneered that their human ingredients today included some truly valuable treasures. His commander ordered him to stay focused, but the guard claimed he only needed a little. The captain let him have his fun, but warned him to make it quick. If the plans of the Khan's emissary failed, both of them would be dead. Meanwhile, the Yang clan warriors realized they had finally found the spot Kai Shai had told them about. They had brought along Black Fang, the master's dog. Without the loyal hound, tracking down the hidden trail would have been impossible. He was highly intelligent, yet kept growling and barking, nearly giving them away. Lin Zai grew anxious. Where had Kai Shai vanished to? After all, he was the guide who located this area, yet he was nowhere in sight. But the fourth brother was far too impatient to wait any longer. He had already let loose an arrow to punish the first wicked guard. Meanwhile, a guard dragged a defenseless captive girl from the group to abuse her. One moment he held the girl, and the next he was gone. It was as if a sudden, blinding streak of fire had violently swept past. The guard was slumped lifelessly against the wooden fence, blood pooling around him. Their camp was under siege, and his comrades scrambled to mobilize. Move quickly, Hui explains that this is the signal from their fourth brother. Time to retaliate. Lu Gong immediately charged forward. Clenching his fists, the young man charged ahead, smashing directly through the massive front gate. Thick smoke swirled. He stood silently amidst the fragments of the ruined stone wall. By then, the black-robed men had already gathered in the courtyard. With swords drawn, the enemies faced Lin Zai, who was stunned by Long's raw power. He finally saw the power of the steed, but Hu Kai refused to waste time talking. It was his turn to fight as Long aggressively threw guards aside with his bare fists. He disarmed his enemies easily, rendering them completely helpless against his brutal onslaught. While some guards tried to ambush Lu Gong from behind, they were spotted instantly. The fourth brother saw them. He fired 2 deadly accurate arrows. Targets down, the 2 allies exchanged quick, grateful nods. Soon, Lin Zai found himself right in the thick of the chaotic melee. Surrounded by skilled black-cloaked guards, he was now facing some real opponents. They thought his spear was useless up close. That was a huge mistake. Lin Zai easily swept his spear, driving them back and taking down the attackers. With the guards cleared, Hu Kai told Lin Zai to head down to the citadel. He was to take Black Fang, locate the prisoners, and guide them to safety. Deep inside, several guards were waiting by the gates to ambush anyone trying to escape. But suddenly, Lin Gu Yang stopped in his tracks, claiming the suffering was finally over. He had been deeply tormented by his own heavy conscience for a long time. Looking at the ruined temple, he felt a crushing guilt for failing to save a girl. He could still picture the women and children who had perished there. Frozen in place, he wept. He simply couldn't take it anymore. He kept repeating that no sinner would escape judgment, though his allies barely heard him. They simply tried to drag their hysterical friend away as he rambled in despair. Out of nowhere, the unthinkable happens. Lin Guyang stabs his own companion. He shouted that Xiao Hongyang and Zhang Xiang were responsible for this tragedy. To protect his own family, he believed he had to slaughter his closest friends. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiang was absolutely livid that his men were terrified of the Yang disciples. In a desperate move, he ordered them to release every single mountain demon inside. Zhang Xiang knew that Lord Xiao was behind this whole setup to frame him. Xiao had pinned the blame on his loyal subordinate to save himself. Yet this disaster actually doubled as a perfect, unexpected opportunity. No one would question him saving his son if they escaped through the secret tunnel. If he pulled this off, he could turn the tables completely as dawn broke. The three disciples stood amidst the smoking ruins, thinking death was too easy for them. Lane Zai was missing, but the boys didn't worry just yet. They figured he was simply escorting the rescued hostages down the mountain road. Still, Lu Gong felt deeply unsettled by the overwhelming stench of fresh blood. It was too strong. Something dark was happening that they didn't understand. Nearby, Lin Zai patrolled the quiet woods with Black Fang, searching for more captives. His search paid off when he suddenly stumbled upon a hidden rocky entrance. This concealed doorway was undoubtedly the entrance to a highly secret escape route. One look at Black Fang's tense reaction confirmed his worst fears about what lay ahead. Something highly important was hidden behind that door, so he quietly pushed it open. Sunlight streamed inside, but the moment he stepped in, the heavy door slammed shut. Absolute darkness and terrifying uncertainty lay ahead, waiting for him. A sudden system notification popped up, tasking him with a demonic hunt. Every breakthrough would now yield double the rewards. Lion's Eye recognized this system quest. Suddenly, his dog barked a fierce warning. Shadows of mountain demons were ahead. Monsters lurked right ahead in the deep dark, to Lion's Eye's sheer horror, though. There were way too many of them, and soon the entire cavern crawled with monsters. There was absolutely no escape. He was completely locked inside until they were all dead. Cleansing this entire dungeon of mountain demons was his only ticket out. Realizing he had a massive job ahead, he knew there was no time to waste. He slammed his spear into the stone floor, bracing himself for the onslaught. Lion's Eye smiled. Over the last few days, his strength had grown immensely. Now the first wave of hideous beasts was already charging straight at him. He smashed the mountain monsters with his bare fists and feet, hoping to hold out. A pack of demons lunged forward, baring their bloodthirsty fangs to feast on him. But Lion's Eye met their savage charge with a barrage of heavy punches. These grunts were fairly weak, meaning every single one of his strikes landed perfectly. Still, to survive an endless horde like this, he had to give it everything. He grabbed his trusty spear and hurled it straight into the thick of the crowd. The devastating throw obliterated the next wave, slowly pushing his progress bar upward. With every mountain demon he slaughtered, his raw power surged even higher. As the initial wave finally cleared out, Lion's Eye took a deep breath. He realized he could actually handle this solo, and his confidence soared. But of course, this system never makes things easy for him. The horde advanced like a solid black tide, ready to devour everything. Lion's Eye gripped his spear, boosting his speed to weave gracefully through the chaos. He tore them apart with precise thrusts, backing it up with brutal kicks. The fight became a complete bloodbath, and he began taking down multiple targets at once. Suddenly, the remaining demons were cleared, and a tall figure stepped out from the shadows. This newcomer recognized Lion's Eye immediately, clearly shocked by his incredible physical growth. Zhang Zhang stared in disbelief, stunned that the fishy orphan could actually survive this. He never expected a worthless orphan to make it this far, but this was perfect. Zhang Zhang grinned, saying he brought a special present, while dragging a beaten man by the hair. It was Lu Zhang, the father of Lion Zai's mentor. Lion Zai froze in horror. Angered, he glared at Zhang Zhang, warning him that his allies were already close by. Today would definitely be the day this absolute scoundrel met his end, Zhang Zhang laughed. Then, with a deafening crash, the dungeon wall completely shattered into pieces. An enormous, highly dangerous mountain demon squeezed through the newly made breach. This colossus was far larger than any monster lion Zai had ever faced. He had no clue where such a terrifying beast could have come from. The massive demon let out a guttural roar, promising they would find out soon enough. Meanwhile, at the citadel of the demon mother, a bizarre dawn was breaking. Every single captive had been liberated, but the fleeing warriors were utterly terrified. They bolted through the forest, knowing the demons they previously fought were just the beginning. He was deeply alarmed, fearing his younger brother Lin Zai would face something far more terrifying than any ordinary mountain demon. Meanwhile, Lin Zai stood before a brutal beast of the Skun power tier, realizing this was the most dangerous situation he had ever faced since his rebirth. This mountain demon had huge bulging arms, a massive body, a jagged toothy maw, and powerful legs. At first glance, it was obvious that the creature possessed immense, crushing strength, and defeating it would be completely impossible without a solid plan, especially since Lin Zai's current level was nowhere near enough to face such an opponent. But the young man could not just give up. That would be completely pointless. He had already endured too much, fighting for his survival, to back down now, so he steeled himself for battle, knowing that danger was just a part of life, and his brutal childhood had not broken him. So he fought on, utterly unafraid of the giant opponent, treating it as just another beast. Lin Zai weaved around, trying to avoid the giant's wild attacks, knowing a direct frontal assault was unlikely to work. Whenever he could not dodge, he shielded himself with his weapon, though he still took some serious damage. Lin Zai was incredibly quick, managing to leap out of the way at the very last moment, as if instinctively sensing where the next strike would land. Yongzhang watched the intense clash, unable to comprehend how Lin Zai could fight like this, especially since he had only been with the clan for 6 months. Yongzhang shouted to the monster, declaring his total faith in his own son, who loved his father and would surely slaughter this weak, insignificant opponent for his sake. The beast had always desperately craved his father's love. Fueled by this, the mountain demon fought even more savagely, eventually breaking right through the defenses and slamming Lin Zai hard into a pile of rocks. Yongzhang was absolutely thrilled, shouting out that his daddy believed in him. Dragging himself up, Lin Zai felt the crushing difference in pure power between himself and his monstrous opponent. At that exact moment, a system notification flashed, announcing the demon hunt was over and offering a special gift, a direct fusion with a fragment of the River Guardian's Imperial Grace. Lin Zai grinned, knowing that sheer luck was also a genuine form of power. Talk about perfect timing. This timely notification meant he actually had a fighting chance. Without hesitation, he accepted the fusion, and his physical body immediately began to transform. Opening his eyes, the young man had no idea where he was or what laid right before him. Suddenly, a massive water beast loomed over, greeting its new master and pledging that the River Guardian would show mercy. Lin Zai suddenly realized he had somehow taken direct control of the colossal River Guardian, who viewed defying the natural laws of the universe as a direct path to death. The water beast warned him not to hold a grudge. If the enemy refused to surrender, the deadly consequences would fall entirely on them. Completely calm, the River Guardian prepared to unleash a devastating technique against the monster. This skill, known as Dragon's Rip, would quickly put an end to this fight. Meanwhile, Yongzhang watched, deeply satisfied. Seeing Lin Zai lying completely motionless on the ground, he scoffed, wondering what this pathetic weakling could have possibly hoped to achieve, Yongzhang believed his actions were completely justified. In this dog-eat-dog world, survival was everything, and anyone would have done the exact same. Sure, some people are born incredibly lucky, with silver spoons in their mouths, but Yongzhang had to fight for his son's future. He had sacrificed far too much just to become the chief servant of that total idiot. Zaiwo and the others could never understand the agony of a man who sacrificed his own son. Now this very son had to help his father drag their dark plans to a final conclusion. Everything had to be finished now. Suddenly, Lin Zai snapped his eyes open. His gaze blazed with pure, burning fire, looking like a powerful, explosive force. Rocks shattered in all directions, forcing even the mighty mountain demon to retreat. The beast retreated to shield its face, while Zhang Zhang stood frozen in confusion. Thick dust and smoke quickly filled the dungeon, making it almost impossible to see. As the fog slowly cleared, Lin Zai stood there looking stronger and more terrifying than ever. His eyes literally blazed with fire, just a short while before this crazy showdown. Lin Zai had asked his master about the legendary paths of the Crucible and the Rainbow. His master, Yang Dong, warned him that no living soul had ever witnessed such power. Nobody knew what they truly were, but legends called them the divine paths. Lin Zai suddenly remembered that talk. Was this his own divine path? It sure felt like it. The young cultivator raised 2 fingers, pooling his energy. Swirling power erupted as he unleashed the devastating Dragon Rift technique. Massive shockwaves blasted outward, leaving his terrified enemies completely clueless. A thick black mist covered everything, while Brother Lu's father watched closely. He understood what was happening, while Zhang Zhang grew highly anxious. Despite his growing fear, he tried to act like everything was fine. He screamed at the boy to stop his tricks and ordered his son to kill him. The loyal mountain demon, ready to die for his master, immediately charged forward. He lunged directly at Lin Zai. It looked like an easy win. The giant fist was literally bigger than Lin Zai's entire body. Expecting an easy kill, the beast unleashed a lethal, crushing strike. Zhang Zhang smiled, confident his son would easily crush this annoying brat. But instead of a victory, the mountain demon let out an agonizing shriek. He stared at his giant fist, completely unable to process the pain. Wait, his arm was rapidly dissolving, looking exactly like it was dipped in acid. Terrified, the demon turned around and ran back toward his master. Desperate for one last embrace, he cried out to his dad for help. He expected his father to save him, but he never even made it. The demon disintegrated into nothingness, leaving Zhang Zhang staring in absolute horror. He collapsed onto the cold stone floor, staring blankly at the empty air. Everything was gone. His loyal servant and his own son had perished for nothing. The devastating loss hit him harder than he ever could have anticipated. He was left completely alone, robbed of both his child and his most loyal servant. That's when his tearful eyes fell on Lin Zai, who had collapsed face first. Lin Zai lay unconscious, his battle spear resting nearby on the ground. Enraged, Zhang Zhang grabbed a heavy stone to crush this orphan once and for all. He blamed this kid for everything, but right as he raised the rock, look out. A massive explosion shook the walls, making Zhang Zhang realize someone was coming. A group of heavily armed warriors stepped right through a breach in the wall. Having finally breached the chamber, they quickly scanned the chaotic battle scene. Their eyes landed instantly on the lifeless body of the 9th younger brother. It was obvious to everyone that a truly devastating battle had just occurred. Inside, the warriors lifted Lin Zai and helped him walk, while Zhang Zhang managed to slip behind a stone wall at the last second. He had no clue how to escape. Now, but the men decided to first carry Lin Zai out into the fresh air because he looked weak. After that, they would return to search the room. Zhang Zhang realized this was his ultimate chance. He leaped straight out of his hiding spot and ran deep into the dark dungeon, but a cold voice suddenly called him out by Name, a man wearing a black robe, demanded to know where his family was, his wife, his daughter, where they had all gone. Jiang Zhang instantly recognized him as one of his own workers. It was Lin Guyang, who seemed to completely forget he was speaking to a martial master. He was being completely disrespectful, but Lin Guyang no longer cared about titles or status. He lunged forward, grabbing Jiang Zhang by the clothes, and demanded to know where his family was. Jiang Zhang was utterly terrified, but he stammered that he had no idea where they were in all this chaos. It was impossible to keep track of anyone. It was highly likely that Lin Guyang's family had already been eaten alive by the vicious mountain demons. That was his final words. Talk about instant karma. Driven mad by grief, Lin Guyang slashed his master across the throat with a dagger, screaming that Jiang Zhang should burn in hell and pay for his sins. Lin Guyang turned and walked deeper into the dark dungeon, refusing to give up hope that his family was still alive. Meanwhile, Lin Zai saw a vision of himself as the river guardian, agonizing in sheer excruciating pain. It felt as if his physical body was being ripped to shreds. With a loud gasp, the boy jolted upright, waking from the nightmare. He realized he was lying in a warm bed wrapped in a blanket. Looking around, Lin Zai realized he was in a quiet room back at Master Yang's estate. Just a moment ago, he was fighting a demon. It looked like the battle was over, and his senior brothers had saved his life. System notifications popped up, confirming his partial fusion with the River Guardian's Imperial grace was finally complete. Lin Zai had earned this incredible power from his demon hunt. He never expected such a massive reward and immediately jumped up to check his new stats. First, he grabbed his spear, noticing it felt significantly lighter and easier to wield, as if he suddenly understood his own body's mechanics much better. Lin Zai could feel a strange, boiling energy pulsing deep inside his core. The young cultivator felt a hot sensation in his chest, radiating warmth throughout his entire body. His cultivation was finally high enough to start refining his physical frame. Lin Zai had only started his cultivation journey a few months ago, yet he had already broken through to the second major barrier, all thanks to his broken cheat system. Suddenly, a light knock echoed and the door swung open, revealing his senior brothers. They looked completely shocked to see him awake and alert so soon after his collapse. Lin Zai, on the other hand, had not expected visitors so early. In the morning, he immediately offered a respectful greeting to his senior brothers, but they quickly waved off the formalities, explaining they had come to question Lin Zai about the events inside the secret chamber. He told them that he had blacked out right after defeating the final mountain demon unleashed by Jiang Zhang. However, noticing his brothers knew absolutely nothing about the actual monsters, the young man kept quiet to avoid tricky questions. Meanwhile, Xiao was incredibly confused. Because they had found the villain Jiang Zhang dead, Lin Zai was quite. It was no surprise that Jiang Xiang was dead, meaning someone was hiding in the secret chamber to watch the fights. If he was not with Lord Zhao's men, why did he choose to stay hidden? The mysteries only kept growing. Huchai thanked Lin Zai and promised to report everything directly to his master. He told Lin Zai to rest easy, while Xiao shared the latest news. Lin Zai's old family home in his village had finally been completely rebuilt. The young man was deeply surprised, never expecting anyone to renovate his home. Returning to his home village, Lin Zai stood there absolutely frozen in shock. Instead of his small fisherman's hut, a grand and sprawling estate now stood. The busy construction site was teeming with workers, and a man approached him. He welcomed the youth warmly and offered a tour, leaving Lin Zai quite shy. Calling him Master Lin felt wrong to him since they were far older. Finally, the village chief stepped forward to explain everything to the young man. He reminded him how he saved everyone at the Grand River Festival. This massive house was simply their way of thanking their brave savior. The locals had even pooled their small savings together as a gift. But Lin Zai firmly refused and suggested spending that money elsewhere instead. He proposed using the funds to buy 2 hot meals daily for the builders. Any leftover money after the project should simply be returned to the villagers. Hearing this, the workers listened in sheer amazement to his selfless words. He pointed out that these days, simple grain is often pricier than meat. This fully convinced the locals that Linzai was not just incredibly brave, but also exceptionally noble, remarkably generous, and deeply respected by everyone. Tales of Master Lin quickly spread everywhere, filling his people with absolute pride. The chief also mentioned that the Yang clan had dispatched 3 strong guards. They were sent to patrol the area and keep dangerous mountain demons away. But these guards were ruthless, making some locals fear them even more. Looking around, Linzai realized just how proud his father would be. If only he could see him now, the young man felt certain that his life was not in vain and greatness lay ahead of him. He vowed to help others. As night fell, Linzai visited the riverbank. His old boat was wrecked, so he needed a replacement to continue fishing. But tonight, Linzai wanted to test something far more fascinating. He had been waiting for this exact moment since his system first awakened. At first, he thought these magical abilities were nothing but wild dreams. But having witnessed the river guardian walk on water, he took a step. As the waves yielded to him, watch how Lord Zhao and his son crawl in absolute terror. They knelt before the messenger, completely clueless. Lord Zhao wept in total panic. Their strongest hideout had been seized, and their greatest fighter was dead. Even worse, more than 100 of their newly bred mountain demons were destroyed. In a fit of rage, the envoy shoved aside the weeping Zio. The useless son could only whine as the furious leader demanded answers. Their plans for this region were nearly complete before this disaster struck. He demanded to know how their secret hideout was ever found out. But this was just one loss, and thankfully, more strongholds remained. Thankfully, there were enough materials for the pearls. The envoy ordered Lord Zio to prepare a boat immediately. He wanted to return to the cult as soon as possible. Lord Zio realized the danger had passed, promising to get everything done. By tomorrow morning, everything would be ready. Soon, the Lord and his son sent him off, expressing deep gratitude for his unexpected kindness and understanding. Zio then walked over to the courtyard tree, looking quite pensive and troubled. He told his son he had planted this tree 5 years ago. It grew quite large, yet never once bore fruit. His son listened in quiet confusion. Trying to decipher the true meaning of his words, Lord Zio looked at the useless tree, asking his son why they had not chopped it down. He explained that even without fruit, it attracted birds for them to eat. Lord Zio then began listing the names of his closest, deceased servants. They had perished in the refuge recently, and he compared them to birds. They were born just to be consumed. He spoke coldly of natural selection, bringing up Yongzhang, who sacrificed his own son to save his master. For the first time, his son began to reflect on this harsh reality. Yongzhang had spent more time with him than his own father, yet died. Lord Zio confirmed his thoughts. Every single tree eventually rots away. You cannot rely on them forever. The demon mother cult is no different. It is a dying tree. He handed his son a small wooden box, telling him to deliver it directly to Lion Zai by the next morning. After that, they would leave for Hunga, leaving the others behind to deal with the rest. The next morning, Lion Zai arrived at the martial grounds. His martial brothers stared at him with pure admiration and awe. They had already heard incredible rumors about the massive courage he displayed. He supposedly killed a dozen mountain monsters all on his own. But rumors are rarely accurate. One of the warriors heard that there were actually 100 vicious monsters. Lion Zai immediately realized these tales were getting completely out of hand, likely due to Lord Zio. The young warrior then noticed his senior comrades who survived the shelter. They had gathered together in a tight circle, looking incredibly solemn and sad. Upon seeing Lion's Eye, their somber expressions shifted slightly. They told him they had received a package sent specifically for him. It came from the Jia state, which left Lion's Eye completely baffled. He could not imagine why anyone over in that state would know him. Inside the wooden box were several personal letters and valuable land deeds. They were worth 2,300 ling of silver, offered as an apology, while the remaining items were gifts for anyone who wanted them. Lord Zio was definitely playing a deep game, outlining their escape routes. He detailed their contact methods and secret schedules for the Demon Mother cult. The Marshall brothers fell deep into thought if this handover was intentional. Then Lord Zio was far more calculating than they had first believed. Long decided he would report all of these findings to their master. They needed to plan their next move, but none of them would ever let anyone connected to the Demon Mother cult escape their justice. Back in the village, something strange was happening. The locals spotted Old Man Lu. He was carrying a packed lunch for his wife. The old man confirmed that he was heading to her workplace, simply wanting to make sure she did not go hungry. Everyone in town knew Old Man Lu as a devoted and caring husband. But he could not stay to chat. He had to rush so his family would have their meal. He made his way down the long, winding riverbank until he finally reached a small, quiet pier, but just as he prepared to call out to them, a shadow crept up from behind, a sharp blade right against his throat. Fresh blood splattered over the lunch bag. The killer grabbed the food, muttering that he had to hurry and feed the family. With cold indifference, he tossed the lifeless body into the thick bushes, then calmly carried the lunch over to them. The unsuspecting woman was sitting under a wooden canopy, quietly sewing beside her child. The imposter realized that exactly 1 month had passed since the day that Envoy Khan had warned him about. Soon, he would have to ruthlessly get rid of this mother and child, who currently trusted his disguise without a single doubt. A voice rang inside his head, mocking him, calling him a pathetic coward who lacked the resolve to finish the job. The voice laughed at him, mocking his deep weakness and offering to take complete control. He genuinely believed he was losing his mind to this inner demon. Desperate, he splashed cold water on his face to clear his head, yet the chilling laughter in his mind refused to stop. They were one and the same. He could never escape. Just then, 2 skilled brothers from the Yang martial arts clan arrived at the shore. They requested a ride across. To maintain his cover, the imposter had to act as the local ferryman. He began rowing them across the water while his family waved goodbye from the bank. Meanwhile, Lian Zai and Lu Zio stood at the stern, staying highly alert because they knew cult members could be hiding anywhere. No trust, not now. Suddenly, Lu Zio turned directly to the ferryman, asking if those people on the shore were his family. The killer nodded quietly, but Lu Zio instantly called out his deceptive act. He declared that pretending to be someone else was absolutely repulsive. The ferryman tensed but tried playing dumb, claiming he had no idea what they meant. Slowly, the small boat drifted further into the open water. While the imposter kept his back turned to them, Lu Zio drew his twin daggers, threatening to skin the man alive to get the truth. The imposter snapped. Just 1 day left. He was so close to completing his grand mission. He began to curse furiously, spitting insults at the warriors. If he had just endured for 1 more day, he could have avoided unnecessary bloodshed, but now he would have to slaughter every single one of them, including the woman and the innocent child. The ferryman's face distorted like a monster. As he brandished a deadly weapon, Lian Zai instantly sensed the terrifying aura of a high-rank beast. Lu Zio prepared for a brutal clash while Lian Zai raised his spear, a clear target, the beast in old Lu's body. Lu Zio taunted the beast, asking how long a lone monster could survive against 2 elite, highly trained warriors of the Yang clan. The fake old man suddenly leapt into the air, snarling that they were dead wrong if they truly believed he was fighting all by himself. His true form bursts out of the water with heavy chains and transparent arms. The monster cackles, mocking them for not releasing him a lot sooner. Hooked chains instantly whip out and latch right onto Zai's arm. The tight metal bounds pin his arms down, no movement. A sudden jerk drags Zai over the side and straight underwater. The villain shouts that in their clan, one works in light, the other in shadow. While fighting Lu Xiao, he proudly explains the trap. His underwater specialist partner will end Zai's life in just a few minutes. Deep in the dark water, Zai still cannot see his opponent. Yet something heavy is pulling the chains, dragging him deeper down. The monster is thrilled, knowing this deep water is its absolute home turf. He thinks the boy's lungs are shredded, but oh, is he in for a shock. Instead, the beast is dragged backward and slammed hard into the rocks. Absolute impact. Total confusion sets in. He has no idea who he is dealing with. Zai remembers wanting to test his diving depth after hitting 70% fusion. Now, thanks to this ugly beast, he finally gets his answer. He smiles at the monster, tells him welcome, and pulls back hard. The beast panics at the kid's insane strength and tries to escape. He kicks wildly, never imagining he had just made a fatal mistake. He has stepped right into a dangerous territory where Zai rules supreme. After all, if gods existed, they would protect the weak and suffering. But innocent people die every day, and nobody ever comes to save them. The demon wonders why his own silent prayers went completely unanswered. Why does his life have to end in this dark place? They say you only see God when you are right on death's doorstep. He senses his time is up, but he still wants to know his killer's identity. Even without knowing his enemy's name, he refuses to just roll over and die. He still has the speed advantage, and that might just save him. It should be enough to shred this kid, he thinks, lunging forward. He reaches out with razor-sharp claws, but Zai activates his aquabix. Moving like lightning, the young man closes the gap and lands a devastating punch. The impact is massive, sending the bleeding beast flying backward through the water. How is this possible? He is a sky stage fighter. Zai is not done yet. He pulls hard on the chains again. He reels the terrified monster back in for another crushing strike. The demon never expected the boy to be this relentless. Another precise blow lands, showing him that underwater demons are easy prey. Handling a sky-rank demon down here is actually pretty simple. But he needs to get back to the boat to help Lu Xiao. He swims up, leaving the dying beast coughing up blood in the deep. The fading monster remembers his teacher's old words about seeing God. You only see him at the very end, at death's threshold. This is indeed the end for the mountain demon, as Zai races up. Meanwhile, back on the deck, the other demon takes a heavy beating. Despite the massive damage, this enemy does not seem worried at all. The villain smiled smugly, certain the boy he dragged underwater was dead. Lu Xiao was completely devastated, forced to admit that young Zai was probably dead. He deeply regretted that such a promising young warrior had fallen in broad daylight, but then, to everyone's absolute shock, Zai suddenly burst out of the water. He tossed his spear right back onto the boat and grabbed the wooden side. The young man caught his breath with great difficulty, gasping that the villain who had dragged him down underwater was just eaten alive by a massive river monster. Zai did it on purpose, acting like he was barely clinging to life, making it look like pure luck. That a wild beast had taken out his opponent instead. Right then, the Taoyua crocodile drifted past, and the onlookers figured the villain had fallen prey to the giant reptile. Lu Xiao was totally convinced the kid just got incredibly lucky, and concluded that Zai had survived without exposing his true martial abilities. Later on, they called in the local guard, who quickly arrested the man impersonating Mr. Lu. The fake was so broken over losing his dark demon that he did not even try to resist. The poor woman learned her real husband was killed long ago, and that a foul demon had possessed his empty body. Though luckily she and her young daughter survived, this cultist was not very strong. Just a low-ranking rookie of their generation, making him easy to handle. A fierce tiger-level warrior lives 120 years, with immortals lasting longer. But 60 years have already flown by since the great Qing dynasty fell. The older generation of cult followers is barely hanging on now. The middle generation is entirely wiped out, and immortals only show up as an absolute last resort. So this kid was not part of the core. The real threat is their elites, who keep bringing in fresh, dangerous blood. Just then, a stranger arrived at the Zio estate. After years of servitude and brutal daily labor for the cult, he finally mastered their supreme blood sacrifice technique. It was painfully clear that they desperately needed fresh talent. The man clutched a glowing purple pill, known as wolf smoke, their final beacon of hope. Suddenly, a violent knock. Right on cue, a loud knock shook the door. Trouble had arrived. He had no intention of opening it, but the entire wooden frame suddenly blasted inward. After a massive kick from outside, splinters rained down, leaving the man wondering if he must fight. Who was there? He demanded an answer. Stood there a pair of elite warriors from the Yang martial arts clan. The cultist raised his arms in a desperate attempt to block a massive, crushing blow aimed straight at him. The impact was so devastating, it sent him flying backward across the courtyard. Crashing hard into the brick wall, blacksmith Lugong realized from that heavy clash that his opponent's cultivation tier was likely even higher than his own, and that meant the enemy possessed at least wolf smoke power, making this fight extremely dangerous. The dazed stranger sat up, quietly realizing that although he expected a brutal challenge, these opponents actually looked quite weak. Hu Kai tried to quickly read the enemy's strength, since the guy took that hammer blow without getting a single scratch. He was clearly a monster. Meanwhile, the stranger began gathering his chi, confident that if these pathetic fighters had nothing else, they would not be walking out of here alive. The martial artists noticed him gathering massive energy, realizing this was going to be a bloodbath. Why wait around for the villain to reach full power? He leaped forward instead and slammed right into the massive stone monument. It was a completely unexpected strike, aimed directly at the stranger, who casually shattered the heavy rock with bare hands. Before the monster could even brush the dust off, a volley of sharp arrows launched by Hutch came flying in. The villain knew a basic arrow could never pierce his defensive energy, let alone scratch his skin, but these were different. Right as the tip neared his face, Hutch yelled out to open them up. Instantly, the arrowheads burst, releasing a thick gas. Blindsided, the villain clutched at his burning, painful eyes. Seeing a golden opening, the blacksmith rushed in immediately. Moving like lightning, he threw himself at the blinded enemy, throwing everything into his massive, heavy fists, a gorgeous hit that sent the target flying backwards. The guy crashed right into the courtyard dirt, realizing his cover was totally blown. It had to be that traitorous Zio, and now none of them could leave alive. He reached for a deadly wolf smoke pill, but Hutch was way too fast. His sniper-level shot hit the pill directly midair, shattering it completely. The villain spat on the ground, cursing that scoundrel Zio for talking. But wait, nobody ever said that first pill was even the real deal. The man suddenly threw a strange purple beam down his throat instead. Our heroes did not even see him do it, but they felt the immediate danger. He swallowed the medicine, shaking off the blinding gas, and started to transform. His wounds closed instantly, and a massive surge of dark energy erupted. Standing there now was a towering, terrifying demon, looking absolutely unstoppable. Flexing his new muscles, the monster smugly asked if they could handle his true ultimate form. Meanwhile, Lin Zai and her fourth brother hurried through the busy city streets, knowing they had to reach the Zio family estate immediately. They arrived to find a quiet courtyard, but as heavy, choking pressure filled the entire air. Zio knew his friends were in deep trouble. Suddenly, violent blasts shook the far side of the massive property. Stone pillars shattered, sending sharp debris flying through the air. Cultists never play fair. Now, a truly desperate fight was starting. The odds were stacked terribly against them. Facing this beast, they wondered if there was even a shred of humanity left inside that monstrous form. The giant stood towering over them, radiating a chilling, pitch-black aura. He mocked them, claiming that normal people created the monsters they feared. Decades ago, brutal wars tore the lands apart, destroying countless families. Innocent villagers fled for their lives as entire towns burned to ashes. Back then, he begged his wife to run with their baby while he drew the enemy soldiers away, desperate to save his own family. Unfortunately, his wife was mortally wounded and passed away soon after. Her final wish was for their little boy to survive no matter what. That tragedy bound them to serve the sacred mother of their dark order. Surviving on the streets alone was an absolute nightmare for the boy. Eventually, the powerful cult leader took him in, training him as an apprentice. Renamed Hanjai Jun, his entire existence was pledged to the sect. Now, a deadly, high-speed clash against the Yang clan warriors was finally underway. Hutchai hesitated, unable to aim properly for fear of hitting his ally. A familiar voice calls out behind him. Relieved, he turns. Zio Hu and Lane Zai have arrived, ready to join the battle. Hutchai admits he cannot help Lu Gong, who is battling the cult leader. Zio Hu, their absolute best archer, tells him not to worry. The expert marksman easily draws his weapon while the boys look on. This is wolf smoke combat, a level of power they rarely see. Honestly, who would want to miss a top-tier legendary clash like this? The speed of this fight is intense, meaning Lu Gong must find a weak spot immediately. The young man realizes the opponent's weakness is right near the heart. His plan is to expose that weak spot so his waiting comrades can safely join the fray. Just then, an arrow whistles right past the blacksmith's ear. It flies true, burying itself directly in the demon's chest. The shot seems weak, but this enemy possesses an incredibly powerful defense. He laughs, boasting that mere arrows cannot scratch him. His barrier holds, but Lu Gong quickly realizes what is happening. Their fourth brother is intentionally firing weak shots to distract the beast. As the next arrow flies, Lu Gong seizes his chance and strikes. His fist hits the enemy's chest, while the archer's follow-up shot lands. With the protective barrier shattered, the target is now completely defenseless. This masked leader of the Demon Mother clan has always hidden away. His followers often asked why they could never walk in the sun. Hanjai Jun explained they were merely remnants of a fallen dynasty. There was no room for them after their birthright was stolen. But then a surprise arrow strikes right through Hanjai Jun's defenses. It pierces his chest, completely shattering his powerful protective shield. Shocked and defeated, Hanjai Jun doubles over and coughs up blood. He clutches his chest, unable to comprehend how they bypassed his guard. Watching the battle closely, Lin Zai finally understands the clever strategy used here. Zio Hu deliberately weakened that first shot to fool the enemy. The villain assumed it was just a harmless, weak arrow from Hutchai. But the second arrow was packed with all of Skakun's power. Lin Zai watches with admiration, knowing he still has much to learn. True combat requires martial skill, but also cunning and tactical strategy. Lu Gong turns to his allies to issue a quick command. The enemy is down, but they must bind him with steel immediately. These heavy chains are forged specifically to contain wolf smoke level power. Even with an arrow pierced straight through his heart, Hanjai Jun remains incredibly dangerous. It is a stark reminder of how powerful their enemies truly are. Lin Zai watches silently while his older comrades chuckle at his expression. They tease the young warrior so he does not pass out from fear. Zio Hu points out that these twisted cultists always love keeping dangerous demons close by their side. But Hanjai Jun interrupts, saying they are neither human nor demon. Speaking is clearly an agonizing struggle for the defeated leader, but he still forces the words out. He has spent his entire life in a dark cave without sunlight. He asks what it is like trying to climb out of a corpse-filled pit. Your entire life. In reality, Hanji Jun only wanted to live. Under the warm sun, something ordinary warriors would never understand. Hearing this, Lu Xiao tells the villain to stop playing the victim. The horrific crimes of Han and his cult destroyed hundreds of innocent families, ripping children from mothers and fathers from daughters. There is absolutely no point in crying over a miserable past just to beg for pity. Xiao does not care about this pathetic monster. He wants to snap his neck and feed his heart to the dogs. His comrades watch him with concern, knowing how personally he takes this. Everyone knows the fourth warrior is an orphan whose parents died by cultist hands. To prevent retaliation, the group decides to take Jai Jun back to the clan leader. Soon, the entire group leaves the Xiao state behind, even though Kai Shai is still clearly upset. Long wraps his friend in a warm hug, promising him some fine drinks once they deliver the villain. Meanwhile, Hui asks Kai Shai to train him in archery since nobody shoots a bow better than him. Lin Zai watches his companions with a genuine smile. It had been forever since he saw such deep warmth and loyal bond. The young warrior realizes he has never experienced anything like this. Lu Gong invites him along to celebrate today's victory. Lin Zai is absolutely thrilled and happily accepts, ready to tag along. He has so much to learn from these warriors. Together, they march the defeated Hanji Jun back, regardless of the brutal arrow still piercing his chest. They turn their focus to Lin Zai, who watched the duel with total awe. Now check out the masterless pets, who are looking incredibly depressed lately. Tahua the crocodile is losing weight, and Chan just hides in his cave. He passes his days eating and sleeping, though he desperately wants to change. So Chan suddenly leaps up, washes his face, packs his bag, and full of high energy prepares to go fishing. He wants to catch a mystical fish for his beloved master, but this particular fish is no pushover and refuses to give up easily. Chan tries desperately for a long time until totally exhausted. He collapses at the bottom, ready to quit, but then he remembers the lesson. Do not transform in public or people will notice them. The other rule is simple. If brute force fails, use your brain. Chan realizes it is finally time to think. He decides to play the romance card, staring with a loving gaze, but that fails too, as the stubborn fish swims away. Chan cannot understand how any fish could be so heartless to ignore those romantic vibes. Clash and Tahua just watch the whole thing unfold, finding Chan's pathetic attempts absolutely hilarious. Deeply disappointed, the pet lies down again, hoping some compassionate fish will swim closer. Chan really has no clue what to do, wondering if he should ask someone for actual help. That might look highly unprofessional, but masterless pets can resort to extreme measures. Tahua completely agrees, barely holding back from devouring every single fisherman who dares step near his river. Meanwhile, morning breaks over the quiet martial arts clan, with almost nobody in sight. The streets are empty except for one student. Lin Zai just cannot calm down. After they dealt with Han Jai Jun, the mistress rewarded them with silver. It was confiscated from the Xiao estate, giving everyone 150 silver taels. And it was the purest kind, making everyone incredibly grateful for her generosity. Lin Zai himself was completely thrilled, holding his new wealth with wide eyes. His older brothers teased him, knowing he had never held this much cash before. Soon after, the brothers set out again to finish off the cultists. During their raids, the young man's physical power grew by leaps and bounds. He still had not broken through the physical barrier, but progress was undeniable. Breakthrough any day now. He felt the time was coming very soon. Kai Shai stepped onto the training grounds and watched Lin Zai pushing his limits. Seeing the kid train so hard was fantastic, but there was news to share. The master had returned and was calling a meeting to discuss recent events. It was time to reward their achievements, even though Han Jai Jun remained locked up. The prisoner kept screaming threats, swearing he would butcher the entire Zio family. He swore he would destroy everyone who dared to stand here watching him so calmly. Kai Shai could not understand why they had to dine right next to this freak. Chain right to a dining post, talk about an absolute appetite killer for everyone. Apparently, the lady herself ordered this setup, though her true motives remained a mystery. Kai Shai noticed another brother who had been absent during the Zio estate battle. The warrior explained that he and his brother Gyu Ran were handling another mission. Now reunited, all the men sat around the table, deeply impressed by their hostess. She had put together an absolute masterpiece of a feast for them. Long realized that Lin Zai probably did not even know the lady's actual name. Her name was Hu Hanzhu, and her family background was incredibly prestigious. Her ancestors served as high ministers and chief secretaries within the imperial court. In fact, the commander-in-chief personally introduced her to their clan master. Her father was Hu Rongyang, a powerful third-rank official in the capital. So her marriage to their teacher, Yang Dongsheng, was a major political alliance. But it was best not to gossip about that unless they wanted to get skinned. Right on cue, the teacher arrived at the feast alongside his distinguished wife. Everyone took their seats and listened closely as Master Yang addressed the room. He thanked all the disciples, praising them for a job exceptionally well done. As for the two bound villains, they would soon face official imperial justice. Hanjai Jun spat out his defiance. He did not care about being flayed alive. He screamed that the rest of his cult would bring bloody vengeance upon them. Master Yang scoffed, stating these cultists never understood the concept of balance. They acted like mindless fanatics, completely blinded by their extreme goals and nothing else. The master made it clear that Han Jai Jun was only breathing because he was useful. Otherwise, they would not have let him draw breath for a single second longer. Once the trial concluded, every single warrior and disciple would receive major rewards. But right now, Master Yang had something special prepared for their youngest. Holding a delicate wooden box, he presented it directly to Lin Zai. He explained that a delivery arrived last night, sent directly from the boy's brother. Lin Zai stared in utter shock. Unbelievable, he had not expected this at all. Lin Zai never expected to receive a gift, wondering who this older brother could possibly be. The night before, the captain faced questions about why he was giving this rare treasure away. After all, he fought wolf smoke for it, but the captain had a different plan. His younger brother was incredibly lucky, unlike those who had spent years looking down on him. They always underestimated him, the guard agreed, confirming his thoughts completely. Leaders must remain neutral. A warrior sitting nearby suddenly spoke up. He knew their secrets. He yelled out that their whispering was useless. To put an end to their idle chatter, he offered to treat everyone to drinks. The fighters welcomed his generosity with loud cheers, instantly shifting the heavy mood. Nobody muttered about favoritism anymore. They just wanted to drink. The warrior smiled, genuinely hoping that Lin Zai would love the upcoming gift. Finally, he opens the wooden box, and trust me, nobody saw this coming. A sudden, powerful energy flooded the room. Inside lay an actual spirit weapon. It was a beautifully sheathed dagger. Every spiritual weapon is entirely unique. They evolve alongside their owners, making them legendary treasures in this world. Owning one is an unbelievable stroke of luck for any ordinary martial artist. Very few master blacksmiths in the land possess the skill to forge them. Lin Zai stared in sheer disbelief. He now owned more than one spirit weapon. This stunning dagger in the wooden chest was officially his second spiritual weapon. The young man picked up the weapon and slowly pulled it from its sheath. Reading the inscription on the blade, he discovered its name was Azure Wolf. This specific dagger would cover the glaring weaknesses Lin Zai faced in close combat. He was now fully prepared to fight with absolute perfection in any environment. While he was absolutely thrilled, reality called. He had to return to his routine. He missed several classes because of all the sudden clan drama. It was finally time to head back to school and resume his studies. Packing up his things, Lin Zai set off for his next scheduled lessons. Nearing the school gates, he heard students chanting various letters and sounds. He quickly realized they were currently studying the basics of the phonetic system. Lin Zai smiled, remembering how much he used to struggle memorizing complex characters. Teacher Sihu was absolutely delighted to see the young boy return to class. Lin Zai apologized for his absences, but no one planned to scold him. After all, the school staff knew exactly what he had been up to lately. The teacher urged him inside quickly, eager to show off their latest work. He and the headmaster had successfully upgraded the entire phonetic system. In this world, the headmaster held the role of a modern school principal. Teacher Zai escorted Lin Zai directly into the office to meet the headmaster. The headmaster was a wise, gray-haired man who dedicated his life to education. He admitted he was deeply impressed by the system Lin Zai proposed. Bowing respectfully, the young man greeted him, trying to keep a straight face. He had simply taught them basic rules that kindergartners know in modern life. The headmaster waved off the formalities, inviting him to review the new notes. These were the detailed revisions he compiled alongside Teacher Zai. Lin Zai began reading. Scanning the papers, he realized his simple advice had worked absolute wonders. The combined system of vowels and consonants was now incredibly streamlined. The abbot had truly upgraded the system, proving the old man was not just elderly but profoundly wise. Lin Zai admitted with total admiration that this new version of the phonetic system surpassed his wildest expectations, but the abbot simply smiled, saying, he respected the young man, since without his brilliant concept, who knows how long. Scholars would have kept explaining characters using other characters, forever, and now, as a sign of their gratitude, countless new doors would open for him, allowing the young man to study absolutely anything he wanted. Lin Zai thanked his mentor and school headmasters, realizing just how incredibly useful it was to have such influential patrons backing him. Smart move, so Lin Zai seized this perfect opportunity, asking who had actually been the teacher of Zihanui. The old abbot scratched his long beard, admitting that now that he thought about it, he had never mentioned the name. And get this, at the very top of their power pyramid sits the emperor, ruling everyone else, with the elite pavilions and the highest academicians answering directly to him. That legendary mentor is named Li Hebai, one of the 5 supreme academics in the land. In his official letter, this grand academician highly praised the phonetic system of Lin Zai. Most likely he will succeed in convincing the emperor. Of course, while Dacian culture is incredibly ancient, that does not mean they are entirely closed off to fresh ideas. This new system will help them keep up with the times. Lin Zai then clarified that besides this scholar, 4 other figures exist, and the imperial reaction remains unknown. Still, the old abbot insisted there was no need to fear the emperor because he had always warmly welcomed innovative concepts. Truly, to be perfectly honest about Li Hebai, anyone would admit he is easily one of the most powerful figures around. Meanwhile, the grand, luxurious imperial palace stood proud in the capital, where the emperor kept a watchful eye on all matters of development and academic progress. After listening to the latest reports, he told the academics to return to their duties if they were finished. The scholars bowed deeply to their emperor, wishing him long life and a prosperous reign, but before they could even step out of the throne room, one of the academics spoke up, declaring that as a deeply loyal servant, he had to share something crucial. He asked to present a completely new method for studying Chinese characters. This bold academic was none other than Li Hebai from the Abyss Pavilion, who wanted to introduce this phonetic system. Another scholar, outraged by this bold innovation, cried out that it was completely absurd and utter nonsense, claiming it was impossible to replace their sacred, ancient methods, and even considering it was foolish. Another scholar stood up in fury, asking if Li Bai really did not understand the very foundation of their national culture. In response, Li Bai accused his colleagues of having no actual grasp of the word reform, relying solely on outdated, ancient knowledge. Fortunately, another academician backed the proposal, declaring that this new phonetic system was vastly superior to the old methods they had used for centuries. However, many took this as a direct insult, claiming it meant their ancestors were foolish, pure madness, some believed. Li Bai would never have dared suggest such a controversial system during the former Qin dynasty. That complaining scholar was instantly shut down because the glorious Dong dynasty was in power, making it completely baffling why he even mentioned the old Qin era. Finally, the emperor raised his hand to silence them. He shouted out, making it clear he had absolutely no time for their endless bickering. Instead, he demanded to know why academician Li praised this method so highly. The scholar bowed even lower before his sovereign, claiming this very method could